Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Hokage puts Naruto into confinement for safety of Konoha part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Sarutobi Hiruzen, the Sandaime Hokage of Konoha, was not happy. He should have known that something would happen, it always did, but on this particular day of the year it was always the worst. He thought he could trust his ANBU, he thought his could trust most of his council. But after this he just didn't know who he could trust anymore. Making his way down the hospital corridor to a special room set aside for when something like this happened, sending nurses and doctors alike to their knees at his barley-contained killing intent, he could feel his temper rise more and more at just the thought. Flashback. Sarutobi was bored, sat in yet another boring council meeting that seemed to have nothing to do with him. All they were talking about was civilian affairs, nothing to do with shinobi. He looked around at all the people present, the civilian council, 30 of the most annoying people in the world, that just seemed to blend into each other, nothing really standing out. The shinobi council, however, was made up of all the clan heads of Konoha, the Aburame, Akimichi, Hyuga, Inuzuka, Nara, Yamanaka, and of course his own clan, the Sarutobi. Then there were the village elders, Hamura, Koharu, and Danzo, his old teammates and former best friend. Over the years they had become more and more distant. They still talked, but it was always about village affairs. He felt a pang of regret for that. They used to be the best of friends, but now it was like they were strangers. It was then that he noticed for the first time that all of the civilian council seemed nervous. He picked up all the little things, the way that some of them kept looking from the clock to him, the nervous whispers between 2 or 3 council members, and the fact that they all seemed to be sweating. His warning bell was screaming. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Then it hit him. The room suddenly became very quiet. All eyes in the room shot to the old Hokage in fear. His killing intent seemed to become visible as a dark aura surrounded him. Slowly, he started to stand up, his head lowered. "What have you done?" he asked in a whisper. Everyone in the room suddenly stopped what they were doing, all turning their full attention to the old Hokage. They could barely hear what he said. Even the shinobi had to strain their ears. Everything in the room was quiet. Nobody wanting to be the first to break the silence that seemed to have spread around the room. Holding all those inside the room, squeezing their chest and stealing their words before they could even think of what to say. Surprisingly, it was one of the civilian council that broke the silence. He looked like any other middle-aged civilian, short brown hair, brown eyes, and wearing a simple gray kimono. He stood up slowly, carefully, as if he was scared of making any sudden movements. What do why you mean?" he stuttered out, and by the end of his question he was shaking. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I wouldn't realize something was going on? I may be old, but I am not senile yet. Now, tell me, what have you done?" By the end of Hiruzen's mini rant he had gone from a soft whisper to nearly shouting at the top of his voice. Slowly standing, he still did not raise his head to look at the now truly frightened men and women sat across from him in their seats, his eyes hidden in the shadows of his Hokage hat. Hamura, Koharu, and Danzo all looked at their old friend in both fear and surprise. But what many, if they were looking them instead of the old Hokage, would be shocked to see was the barely restrained hope in their eye. Finally, after a few more minutes silence, Koharu spoke. "Hiruzen, what's wrong?" she asked her old friend. It was at this point that Sarutobi finally lifted his head so that all present could see his eyes. They were not the soft, caring eyes of the old man that so many had come to know. They were as hard as steel, the pupils of his eyes shrunken in anger. His voice ice cold. Sarutobi spoke. "Why are we here? Why are we all here? These are not shinobi matters. So far we have heard nothing that couldn't wait until the next official council meeting. So why are we here?" At the end of his questions he spoke each of his last words with emphasis. "I was told that there was an important matter that must be discussed, and yet we have been here for 4 hours straight, and all you have talked about is basic information that has no real importance at all. So I ask you, why are we here?" Again, nobody spoke, nobody moved, the tension in the room becoming more and more intense with every passing minuet. It was then that he asked a question that had a very big effect on the room. "What is the date?" Those 4 words froze all those in the room, the civilians in fear and the shinobi in sudden realization. Everything was quiet. Then the killing intent in the room seemed to, if possible, increase tenfold. all the shinobi clan heads and the 3 elders adding their own killing intent to the old Hokages. Suddenly, having not being able to stand the killing intent in the room any longer, one of the civilians, a woman in her late 20s with black hair and an expensive-looking black kimono with the image of a sakura tree in bloom, stood up and screamed in a high-pitched voice. "We did what you were too afraid to do, and by now it's too late. The Kyuubi is dead and all the people it killed that night have been avenged." And it was then that a very pissed Inuzuka shot to her feet, practical frothing at the mouth, along with every other clan head in the room, effectively shutting the woman up. "You fucking fool! Are you so stupid that you actually think that a 7-year-old boy is the Kyuubi? If that was true, we would all be dead by now." At those words, some of the civilians' eyes opened wide in realization, and looks of absolute horror crossed their faces. What had they done? Despite what many would believe, many of the shinobi in Konoha didn't hold a grudge against the boy. Some did, mostly those that lost everything in the attack 7 years ago, but most didn't act on this hate beyond glares and harsh words. Every now and then they would join in with the civilian if there was a mob, but they weren't ninja for long after that. Before anything else could happen, Naro Shikaku started moving to the large wooden doors, a rare serious expression on his normally bored face. "We don't have time for this, we need to try and stop whatever is happening before it's too late." That was all it took to snap the attention of all the people in the room, the clan heads, elders and Sarutobi himself all quickly making their way to the doors. But before he pushed the doors open, he paused, looking back at the members of the civilian council, and left them with one more thing to think about. "If anything has happened to Naruto, anything, I will come back here, and when I do I will show you why they called me the god of shinobi. Boo. Make sure none of them leave this room before I come back." Seemingly out of nowhere, 5 animal masked ninja appeared in the room. And with that he pushed the doors open, only to stop dead in his tracks at the sound that assaulted his and everyone else's ears. He absently thought that someone must have applied a silencing seal to the door while they were in the room. It was the only way to explain why none of them heard the terrifying scream that seemed to echo across the village. And flashback. When Sarutobi finally got to the room, he stopped at the door. He wasn't sure if he could go in. From what he saw when they got to the scene, he knew that it would be bad. It was a miracle, depending on your definition of the word, that he was even alive. Finally raising his courage and taking a deep breath, he pushed the sliding door open. His breath hitched out what was before him. A small, malnourished 7-year-old boy hooked up to several different machines, lying on a hospital bed that made him look even smaller than he was. His entire body was covered from head to toe in bandages. The only parts of his body that was visible through the bandages were his eyes. Walking into the room, Sarutobi sat in the single chair set next to the bed. As he looked at the boy, he began to feel tears falling down his face. In a matter of seconds, the old Hokage seemed to grow 10 years older. "I'm so sorry, Naruto. If I had realized what was going on sooner, I could have stopped this. You should never have had to go through that, no one should." By the time the old shinobi had gotten over his shock from hearing the scream, he and all the others were too late. They found the young boy in the middle of a large crow tied to a log in the center of a large fire. Every now and then someone would throw more wood onto the fire or the occasional bottle at the still screaming boy. But what really got to the group that had just arrived on the scene was that the boy seemed to be healing at the same rate he was burning. Whatever clothes he had been wearing was burned away long ago, giving a clear view of the young child's skin as it sizzled away then grew back. And then they noticed something that really made them sick. He was still conscious, still screaming. And those people were just stood there, laughing and cheering. After he had slaughtered half the people in the crowd in a blind rage and sent whoever was left to Ibiki, they had quickly rushed the boy to the hospital. That was 12 hours ago, and in that time they had found out a lot about what had happened. It seemed that the civilian council had managed to round up a small number of his ninja to help them in their vendetta against the boy. As soon as the meeting was underway, they had applied a silencing seal to the door. After that, they had surprised the AMBU guarding the boy and knocked him out, then moved on to drag the poor boy out of his apartment. The mob had then proceeded to beat the boy to within an inch of his life. When they had their fill of beating the poor boy, they tied him to the post, and after some big speech from one Miss Haruno that included telling the barely conscious Naruto that the Kyuubi was sealed inside him, they had lit the bomb fire. The worst part through was that the boy had been burning for 3 hours straight, the Kyuubi trying to heal its prison in an attempt to live. But it seemed that even the great Kyuubi no Kitsune couldn't heal everything. According to the doctors, Naruto had suffered third-degree burns over his entire body, and it seemed that, even though it was healing. His body would never be free of the scars. About 16 hours earlier, Naruto was sat on his bed in his apartment. Today was his 7th birthday, and like all his previous birthdays, he spent it alone. His apartment was made up of just 2 rooms, the main room, which had his bed, a table, and a small kitchen he didn't know how to use. The once white wallpaper was peeling off the walls, and the carpet was covered in strange reddish-brown stains from all the times the villagers had come and beat him. There was one window that looked out onto the street, but had several cracks and missing pieces of glass from where people had thrown rocks into his room. The other room was what the old man said was supposed to be his bathroom. It did have all the basic things that one would find in a bathroom: a toilet, a sink, it even had a shower. The problem, however, was that he never had any hot water, so whenever he took one it hurt because it was so cold. He also learned that before he moved in, someone, probably his landlord, after hearing that he was moving in, had disconnected the water pipe that went to the toilet. This meant that he needed to put water in it himself when he wanted to flush. The problem with this, though, was that he could barely reach the top of the toilet. He looked around his small apartment. He was lucky the old man could get him it, really. Sure, it was small, but it's not like he had much stuff. And it was still better than when he was living on the streets. 3 years ago, on his 4th birthday, the orphanage had told him that they didn't have room for him anymore and threw him out, literally. One of the care workers had thrown him out by the scruff of his neck. The first few weeks had been hard, but he soon learned which bins would have food and which alleys would have boxes that he could sleep in. But then the villagers had found him. That was when the beatings had started. Luckily, the old man had found him. He didn't trust him at first. It wasn't the first time someone had tricked him. He could remember once how a nice old lady had invited him into her house to eat when she found him looking through her bins. As soon as he was in, she locked the door and proceeded to beat him with her walking stick, screaming something about how he had killed her only son. He finally managed to get away from her by jumping through a window. It was also the first time he noticed that he healed very fast. When he had got far enough away, he had stopped and looked at his arms, filled with shards of glass from the window. Then, right in front of his eyes, the glass was pushed out of his skin and the wounds had healed. After that, he didn't know what to think, but just assumed that it was the same for everyone and didn't think about it again. The old man had been careful when he saw him, shocked as well. But after getting over the shock, he took a shivering Naruto to the hospital, and after getting him looked at, and then brought him here. That was about a year ago. He never left the apartment. All his food was brought to him, so he never needed to. Not that it stopped the villagers. The old man would visit him every now and then. But the old man hadn't had time as of late. Naruto didn't know what he actually did, but he knew it was important. Lost in his thoughts, he didn't even realize that he started singing to himself. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday to me. Happy birthday, Naruto, happy birthday to me. By the end of the song, Naruto was shedding silent tears. Why? Why did he have to be alone? Why? Why did the villagers hate him? Why? At the end of his rant, Naruto stood up and threw the glass of water in his hand into a wall. Not being able to take it anymore, he threw himself onto his bed and sobbed into the mattress. While this was going on, ANBU Captain Hatake Kakashi was looking through the window from his perch on the building across the street. His heart ached at the sight before him. No one should have to go through what he had, and defiantly not a young boy. Kakashi had been the boy's guard ever since the Hokage had found the boy in a back alley, half frozen from the cold. When he had first seen the boy in the hospital, he thought he was actually dead. The Hokage had called him straight to his office and told him what had happened. He had volunteered to be the boy's bodyguard straight away. The Hokage had agreed, but had to set certain rules. The boy was still a civilian after all, and he couldn't actually be given a guard. So they had come up with a solution. Kakashi spent almost all his spare time watching the boy. This made it so he could stop anyone that he could from going after the boy, mostly civilians, but there was a few ninja as well. The only problem with this was that he still needed to go on missions so nobody would realize that the boy actually had protection and not just a passing ANBU. Kakashi knew who the boy's parents were. Really, you would need to be completely blind not to. He had his mother's last name for a start. And as for his father, well, just look at him, he was a carbon copy. The only difference between the two was the skinny frame and whisker marks on his cheeks. So caught up in his thoughts was Kakashi that he didn't notice the black-clad figure behind him. By the time he realized that someone was there, it was too late. The next thing Kakashi knew, there was felt a sharp pain in the back of his head, and then nothing. After an hour or so of crying, Naruto had finally fallen asleep. His dreams were full of faceless people, villagers. They all had one thing in common. They hurt him. His dreams were always the same, at least that was when he could get to sleep. It was very rare for Naruto to sleep more than an hour at a time. He didn't know why, he just didn't seem to really need to sleep. But when he did, it was always the same. He would always have nightmares. Some of them, like the one he was having now, were just of all the times he was mobbed. Other times he had nightmares of strange creatures, odd things. Some of them didn't even seem to have a shape, shades in the shadows of his dreams. The thing that scared him the most, though, was when he had a dream about it. The fox. He didn't know why, but it was always the clearest thing in his nightmares. And it was the one thing that was always there. Whenever he slept, no matter what he was dreaming, it would always make an appearance. A large fox, bigger than any building he had seen in Konoha, bigger even than the Hokage monument. With its blood-red fur and teeth larger than a full-grown man, it was the most frightening thing he had ever seen. But the most terrifying thing about it was the eyes. Large red pools of moving liquid fire ringed in black with a black slit going down the middle. It was like the two colors were fighting for dominance, a never-ending battle. But it was the eyes that haunted Naruto in his waking hours. They held no real emotion. No malice, no happiness, nothing, just a primal instinct, primal need. And yet they shone with an odd intellect. It was like the fox was both a beast yet intelligent at the same time. Naruto was woken when he heard loud banging at his door. Instantly he knew what was going on. It happened all the time. Sitting up in his bed, he just stared at the door. Waiting. He knew from experience that there was no point in hiding. They always found him. It didn't take them long to get through the door, and when they did, Naruto saw a large number of people all crowded in the corridor outside his room. He recognized some of them from previous mobs: the middle-aged fat man that had no hair, the old man with the long white beard and one eye. And then there was the woman with the pink hair. She was a regular when it came to his mobs. Hell, half the time she was the instigator. With her pink hair and green eyes, she normally stood out in the crowd. She had on an elegant red dress with a strange white pattern. She looked like she was going out on a night in the town, not leading a mob to a small boy. They just stood there in the doorway for a moment. The pink-haired lady had a smug look on her face, just staring at him. Her voice cold, she turned around and went to wait outside. Take it outside. With those 3 words, she had broken the floodgates. The men lurched forward and roughly grabbed the boy. Naruto could smell the alcohol on their breath. This was bad. It was always worse when they were drunk. After they dragged him outside, Naruto saw more people. This was very bad. There had never been this many people before. For the next half hour, the mob proceeded to beat, stab, and bludgeon the small boy until there seemed there was nothing left to hurt. Throughout the whole experience, Naruto never made a sound, not even to scream. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. This just seemed to make them angrier. But as soon as they stopped, he started to heal. It was then that the pink-haired woman came back into view. Tie him to the post. Again, Naruto was hurled up and dragged to a post that someone had stuck to the ground and built a bomb fire around it. Now, Naruto might be young, but even he could see what was going to happen. If he could have put up a fight as they tied him to the post, he would, but he was still healing. When he was secured to the post with ninja wire, the mob moved back and 5 black-clad people with hoods stopping anyone from seeing their faces stepped out of the crowd and just stood there, surrounding the unlit bomb fire. When the crowd had quieted down a bit, the pink-haired lady stepped forward and stared at him. After a minuet of just looking into his eyes, she smirked and turned to address the crowd. Tonight, we right the wrongs that have been done to us. Tonight, we take our revenge on this thing. At this point, she throws her right arm out towards Naruto. The crowd began to cheer as her words got more and more heated. Someone in the crowd got so worked up by this that they threw an empty sake bottle at the beaten boy. Then Naruto said one thing, one question that he needed answered. Why? No one answered. After waiting for the crowd to settle down again, she continued. 7 years ago, the Kyuubi attacked this village, destroyed our homes and killed our families. Tonight we take our revenge. This boy has the Kyuubi sealed inside him, therefore he is the Kyuubi. The Hokage may be fooled by its facade, but we are not. At the end of her tirade, she turned to look at the boy. Naruto was shocked. He didn't understand. He was the Kyuubi? That was impossible. Wasn't it? His thoughts flashed to his nightmares, to a giant red fox. What if it was true? What if he was the Kyuubi? It made senses. The glares, the beating, the hate, it was all because he was the Kyuubi. But if he was the Kyuubi, why didn't he remember? If he had killed all those people, he would remember. But before he had time to truly think about this, the pink-haired lady raised her hands and looked at each of the 5 people around the fire. Light it up. And with that, the 5 people around the bomb fire started to make hand seals. When they finished, 5 voices could be heard saying, "Fire style, great fireball jutsu." 5 balls of fire simultaneously struck the bomb fire and lit it. It didn't take long for the heat to get too much for Naruto. He tried not to scream, to keep to his personal vow of silence. But he just couldn't. He let it out. All the years of pain that these people had caused him, all the things they had done. He just let it all out. He screamed. He screamed so loud that it actually made them stop cheering for a moment, but the moment passed and they started again. Soon he started to feel his skin melting off. It was indescribable. He was in so much pain. Then he noticed in his pain-fogged mind that he was healing while he was burning. For 3 hours he screamed, but to him it seemed like a lifetime. A lifetime of burning, writhing in agony, nothing but him and the flames. At some point in time he felt the fire stop. He suddenly started to feel very cold. He had become so used to the heat that he couldn't stop shivering. The last thing he saw before he finally slipped into the abyss that was his mind was the old man, looking down on him with a sad face. When Naruto woke up, he didn't know where he was, and he didn't care. There was no pain. He was numb. He felt nothing, both physically and mentally. Slowly he started to notice his surroundings. He was in some sort of huge, underground cavern, solid stone wall all around him and a barely visible stone roof. To one side he noticed a giant gate. The weird thing was that it seemed to be held shut with nothing more than a piece of paper. As he stood up, he realized that he was knee-deep in some kind of strange in water. It took him a minuet to realize what it was. It wasn't water at all. It was blood. And he still didn't care. It was then that he heard it, a low rumbling sound off in the distance. At first he thought it was thunder, but then remembered he was underground. Whatever it was getting louder. Turning towards the gate, he realized what he was hearing. Growling. And how did he figure that out? By looking at the giant red fox on the other side of the gate. He stared up into its face, into its fire-like eyes. The eyes that had haunted his nightmares for as long as he could remember. And for the first time they didn't scare him. He felt empty, numb. The two just stared at each other for what felt like hours, until finally. Ha ho ha ho ha ho ha ho ha ho ha ho. It was strange to see a fox laugh. Its voice was so deep he could feel the vibrations all around him. I have lived for thousands of years and never have I known a human, a child no less, to look at me without fear. Maybe you won't be such a bad host. Ha ha ha. So it's true. You being here must mean the things the pink-haired lady said were true. Though I can't tell where we are, it does seem oddly familiar. That made the fox stop its laughter in its tracks. The boy's voice sounded wrong. It had no emotion, no feeling. It actually sent a shiver up the Kyuubi's spine to hear such an empty tone in a child's voice. It was then the fox took a good look at the boy. He had a plain white t-shirt with a pair of black shorts. His spiky blonde hair going in all directions and 3 whisker-like marks on each cheek. But what really caught its attention were his eyes. Eyes that were normally full of life no matter what happened, eyes that would brighten up the room just by being there, were now dead. They held no light in them, no shine of happiness, no flashes of anger. Nothing. They were the eyes of an old man that had seen too much and had given up, waiting for death. The Kyuubi didn't know what to think of this. It had never seen eyes like that, especially not in the eyes of a 7-year-old boy. We are in your mindscape. It is a place in your subconscious mind, a bridge, if you will, between the two of us. A physical representation of our minds. Naruto thought about that for a moment, seeming to be getting his thoughts in order. I take it the blood was you, which means that my mind is a sewer? Naruto had been trying to figure out where he was since he got up. It only hit him when the fox said it was his mind. That made the fox laugh again. It was starting to actually like this kid. Sarutobi Hiruzen had sat at Naruto's bedside for 3 days straight. Luckily, his old friends had stepped up to run the village for a few days. He had been skeptical at first of letting Danzo anywhere near his office, but it turns out he wasn't as against him as he thought. He had been, in his own words, trying to bring back his will of fire. It seems that he had taken it onto himself to try and give him a challenge. He had hoped that by going against most of what he said that it would force him to regain the fire that he lost at the end of the Third Great War. Sarutobi was so happy when he heard that he had actually hugged the old cripple. Hamura and Koharu, it seems, had known about this from the start, but didn't have the heart to do the same. So they had distanced themselves from him, not being able to see him that way. When the three had seen his eyes at the meeting, they had seen their friend again. They had come to him the night of the incident and told him everything. Since then they had been handling everything while he waited for the boy in front of him to wake up. They had caught most of the people that night, at least the ones that were left after he went into that rage, but some had still gotten away. They had stopped 4 of the 5 ninja that had been involved, and they had all been nothing more than a few no-named chunin that had lost their families in the Kyubi attacks 7 years ago. The rest that they had caught were just civilians, mostly drunk, and they had all been sent to Ibiki and Anko. 3 days. 3 days and still no response from Naruto. He heard the door to the room sliding open and turned to see Hatake Kakashi entering the room. Kakashi had been in a deep depression ever since the incident. He wasn't wearing his AMBU uniform anymore, just his normal attire of a black full-bodied suit, his mask and his flak jacket, and his left eye covered by his forehead protector. It was his entire fault. If he had been paying attention, this would never have happened, to have been jumped by some no-name chunin. By the time he had come to, it was too late, the damage was done. He had woken up just in time to see the Hokage go berserk and slaughter all those people. He was found on the same roof he had been sat watching over Naruto with his hands tied in ninja wire. After hearing what had happened and a quick talk with the Hokage, he had come to the memorial stone and just stood there, looking at the names of his old teammate and sensei. "I'm so sorry, Minato, Obito, I failed again," he whispered to the air. He hadn't moved for 3 days, just looking at the same names. Finally, he decided that it was time to see if Naruto was okay. Turning his back to the stone, he took off of the hospital. The first thing Sarutobi thought when he saw Kakashi was that he looked even more tired than he did. The bags under his eye only seemed to emphasize this fact. His shoulders slumped, and facing the ground, he slowly walked into the room and stood next to the Hokage, looking at the boy lying in the bed. "I don't blame you, Kakashi. It wasn't your fault. They got around all of us, and you couldn't have known other ninja were going to come." Kakashi didn't react to the Hokage's words. He just stood there, staring at Naruto. Eventually he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I appreciate that, Hokage-sama, but it was my fault. I let my guard down and he paid for it." Sarutobi was afraid this would happen. "Kakashi, they tricked us all, including me. At least we don't have to deal with those damn fools anymore." It was true. While Naruto had been in surgery, Sarutobi had gone back to the council room and repeated what had happened when he had found Naruto. The only difference being that he killed them all. Kakashi still didn't move his eyes from Naruto's form. "I guess." It was then that one of the machines connected to Naruto started beeping rapidly. Startled, Sarutobi shot to his feet and leaned over while Kakashi ran into the hall and shouted for a doctor. "Naruto? Naruto, can you hear me? Naruto?" Slowly, the young boy's eyes started to open. When they did, Sarutobi, Kakashi, and the just arriving doctor gasped and took a step back. His eyes were the eyes of a corpse, lifeless. There was no emotion in his eyes. "Dear Kami Naruto, what have they done to you?" whispered Sarutobi. The doctor walked away over to the boy and shone a small light in his eyes. "He's conscious, and there's nothing physically wrong with his eyes. I'm sorry, there's nothing I can do at this point." With that he left the room, leaving the 2 men in the room with the poor boy. A few minutes later Naruto started to whisper something. It was so quiet that the 2 shinobi in the room had to lean in towards the boy to hear him. "Why? Why didn't you just let me die, old man? Why? Those words broke both men's hearts. To hear such words coming from a 7-year-old boy was just wrong. Not being able to stand it anymore, Kakashi left the room. Probably going back to the memorial stone, thought Sarutobi. It was a full week later that Naruto was discharged from the hospital. He never said a word to anyone, not even the Hokage, after that first sentence. It worried Sarutobi greatly. He also hadn't slept since he had initially awoke. Kakashi hadn't come back. As Sarutobi led Naruto to his apartment, Naruto absently noticed that the people were still glaring at him whenever the old man wasn't looking. He was still covered from head to toe in bandages, although there was an opening at his mouth now as well as his eyes. The old man had found him some basic clothes to wear on the way. Ironically, the same clothes he had when in his mindscape talking to Kyuubi. Sarutobi had tried to talk to him about the Kyuubi, but Naruto would just stare off into space, not saying a word. When they got to the apartment, Sarutobi stayed with Naruto for an hour or so, making sure the boy was okay. Naruto had just gone about his business as if he wasn't even there. At least one good thing came out of this, thought Sarutobi. With the civilian council gone, he was completely in charge of the village until a new one could be found. Meaning that, starting tomorrow night, Naruto would get a full AMBU guard watching over him. He had asked Kakashi to be the team leader, but the man had refused, saying that he couldn't look after him anymore when he let him down like that. Eventually Sarutobi had to go back to work. He had been away for too long as it was. Saying goodbye to the unresponsive boy, he left the apartment, shaking his head at the thought of what had been done to the boy. As the day turned to night, you could find Naruto in the same spot he had been the night when they had come for him, just staring into an empty corner of the room. It was at this point that his door opened. He hadn't locked it, he didn't see any point, it never stopped them before. Stood in the doorway with an insane grin on her face was the pink-haired lady. It seemed that she was one of the few that got away. It was then that he saw the knife in her hand. Why didn't you just die? It was all planned out. I was going to be the one that lead the people to the destruction of the Kyuubi. I was going to be a hero, but you just wouldn't die. As she was saying this, she had moved further into the room, and by the end she had stopped right in front of Naruto and stabbed the boy in the chest with her knife. Naruto didn't react at all, not even flinching as the knife went into his heart. He just kept staring at the same corner. This just made the woman angrier, and so she kept stabbing, each time repeating the same word over and over again. Die. 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 It was then that something inside Naruto snapped. Before the woman could stab him again, he grabbed her by the wrist with the hand that held the knife, and in one quick movement broke it. The lady was so shocked that she just stood there staring at her wrist for a full minuet. Then she started to scream. But before she could get to a decent volume, Naruto had pushed her to the ground and placed one of his hands over her mouth. Looking up into the young boy's eyes, the lady suddenly stopped her struggling and froze in terror. They weren't empty anymore, they were filled with an insane glee at what was about to happen. The boy started to laugh, just a low chuckle at first, but soon building up to full-blown hysterics. After a minuet of laughing, he stopped and leaned closer to her ear and said, "Will you walk into my parlor?" Said the spider to the fly, "'Tis the prettiest little parlor that ever you did spy. The way into my parlor is up a winding stair, and I've a many curious things to show when you're there." And with that, the small boy's body started to change before her eyes. Flashback. Naruto just stared at the giant fox in front of him. He still had that blank look on his face. "Why?" asked the blonde. Not sure what the Kyuubi was trying to do. The fox just looked down at the boy in front of it with an amused gleam in its eyes. "Because it would amuse me, and you need all the help you can get. You're weak, it's pathetic really. And you'll just give me a never-seen-before bloodline with no strings attached?" The fox looked thoughtful for a moment, then its eyes took on a slight shine. "Well, there is one thing I want." The fox paused here, seeing how Naruto would react. At a small nod from the boy, it continued. "I want for your people to remember why they should fear me. I want you to show them why my name is so feared. Do that and we will call it even. Just spread a little case." By the end, Kyuubi's grin was so big it looked painful. "That's it." "That's it," the Kyuubi replied with a nod. Naruto thought about it for a moment, then agreed. What harm could it do? Okay. With that, the Kyuubi sent as much of its chakra through the bars and into the boy as possible. After a few minuets of that, it pulled back, slightly winded. It's done. So what can I do? You can be anything. Naruto looked at the fox for a moment. Isn't that just what parents tell their kids to make them feel good? The fox looked at the boy, trying to tell if he was serious, a large sweat drop appearing at the back of its head. Yes, it is. But in this case, it's literal. I basically gave you the ability to shapeshift. Its only limit is your imagination. Naruto thought about that for a minuet. That sounded useful, to be able to change into practically anything. How does it work? It's simple enough. Just picture a form in your head and channel chakra through your body. And I can be anything? Well, there will be limits. Nothing too big, and the more complex it is, the harder it will be. Oh, and if you're not careful, you could lose control and go on a killing spree. Doesn't that sound fun? Naruto just stared at the fox for a moment. It made sense, and he didn't really care about killing. Fair enough. The fox just stared at the boy in front of it for a long moment, then burst out laughing. Ha ha ha, they really did ha 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 break you, didn't they, my Kami? This is the most fun I've had in centuries, ha 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 ha. Naruto just stood there, staring at the fox. When the Kyuubi calmed down enough to stop laughing, it turned back to the boy. Thanks for that, WOW, I needed that. Anyway, I think it's time for you to wake up. See you later, Kit. Before Naruto could reply, he got very dizzy and fell back into the water. When he opened his eyes, he could see the old man leaning over him. And flashback. He could feel it, the way his body shifted to his will. He could feel muscles ripping and knitting themselves back together. He could feel his bones breaking and reforming. The way his clothes seemed to meld into his body. It was excruciating. And euphoric. He had never felt so alive. When it was done, he stood up and stepped back from the pink-haired lady. She was so scared of what was in front of her that she forgot to scream. Standing in front of her, in all its 10-foot-tall glory, was she didn't even know. It was like something out of a nightmare. If only she knew. It actually was from one of Naruto's nightmares. His very skin covered in what looked like an ivory white shell. The only clothing he had was a torn black cloth that covered his waist down to his knees and held up by bandages tied to his waist, his body covered in muscles, reminiscent of a bodybuilder. Long, spiky, blonde hair going down to his feet and strange red markings covering his body. His hands were huge with long, bony fingers tipped in vicious claws. He had what seemed to be spikes growing out of his shoulders and a long tail coming out the base of his spine, the end of which was a deep crimson, as if it had been dipped in blood. But what really scared her was his face and chest. A demonized skull-like mask covered his whole face with long, sharp teeth and what seemed to be spread in a horrifying grin, and more of the red markings on the left side of its face. Cold yellow eyes ringed in black with a sick glee shining in their eyes. And a hole in the center of his chest where his heart should be. Naruto just stood there a moment to admire himself. This had been one of the creatures he had seen in his nightmares. It looked just like it, down to the last detail. He laughed. He couldn't stop himself. He absently noted that his voice had a strange echo to it, as if more than one voice was talking at the same time. The irony, for years this creature had haunted his nights, now it would haunt others as well. Without saying a word, he bent down and grabbed the pink-haired lady by her throat, lifting her up easily with one hand above his head. And with no effort at all, threw her through the window and into the street outside. Jumping out after her, he slowly made his way over to her broken body. She was covered in cuts and broken glass from being sent out the window. Both her arms were bent in odd ways, obviously broken in several places. She was still conscious, but only just. He couldn't have that. He wanted her fully aware for what he was going to do. Quicker than most eyes could see, he speared her through the abdomen with his tail. He held it there for a moment, listening to her gargled screams. Music to his ears. He then sent a small pulse of his chakra through his tail and into the woman on the ground at his feet. Instantly her eyes shot open and she started to scream as loud as her abused lungs could manage. Again Naruto stopped and listened to her screams. When he had enough of that, he picked up his foot and brought it down on her, mostly uninjured left leg, breaking it in the process. He tilted his head to the side in fascination as her screaming changed pitch. He did it again with her right leg. Then each of her already broken arms. Each time he did this, she made a new sound. A platoon of 5 ANBU that had heard the screams and come to investigate were watching in stunned silence as they saw something mutilating the still alive woman. What shocked them more was that it was the woman that they were told to look for. She had somehow managed to get away on the night of the incident, and had avoided them ever since. It was very embarrassing. A cat-masked ANBU turned to another with a dragon mask and asked in a clearly feminine voice. "What should we do, Captain?" The now identified captain remained quiet for a moment, before replying. "You go and inform the Hokage. We will stay here and try to subdue it. Hurry." And with that she was gone in a swirl of leaves. The 4 remaining ANBU jumped off the building they were stood on, and ran towards the creature. Seeing them coming out of the corner of his eye, Naruto grabbed his limp prey and held her to his chest, facing the ANBU, still laughing insanely. They stopped in their tracks, not expecting the creature to have seen them coming. Stepping forward, the dragon-masked ANBU spoke. "Drop the woman and get on the ground, do you understand me?" The creature just laughed at him. Then, slowly reaching around the woman's stomach, dragged its claws over it, causing her intestines to fall out onto the ground. The ANBU was shocked, and what was worse was that the woman was still alive. But not for long. And just before the light left her eyes, the creature reached a hand around her neck and pulled it off. No effort, it made it look easy. What it did next shocked the ANBU just as much. In its echo-like voice it started to sing. "Ring around the roses. A pocket full of posies. A tissue. You all fall down." At the end of the song it started to laugh again. One of the ANBU, a large, bare-masked man, ran forward. "No! Stop! We have to take it together!" called out the captain, but it was too late. The bare-masked ANBU started to run through hand signs, but before he could finish, the creature appeared in front of him and grabbed his arms just below the shoulders. The ANBU let out a scream as the hands got tighter and tighter. Until finally, with a quick jerk, both his arms were pulled off just below the shoulder. But before he could get over his shock at the loss of his arms, the creature used them as clubs and hit him so hard his head exploded in a shower of blood and gore. Insane laughter could be heard all over Konoha. Without further ado, the remaining 3 ANBU sprung into action. Wood style, tree bind jutsu. Instantly, long pieces of wood shot out of the ground and wrapped themselves around the beast's arms, legs, neck, and chest. Fire style, great fireball jutsu. Wind style, great breakthrough jutsu. The 2 jutsu joined together, the fire being fueled by the fire turning white from the heat. The laughter stopped as soon as the attack hit, and the ANBU breathed a sigh of relief, only to take a step back in fear when it started again, if weaker than before. Nothing had ever survived that combination, nothing. When the smoke cleared, they could clearly see the creature still standing, although only just. Its body was covered in what seemed to be cracks. As they watched, pieces started to fall of the beast and to the ground, only to disintegrate before they reached the floor into black smoke. The Hokage arrived with the cat-masked ANBU just in time to see the beast before it seemed to burst into black smoke, leaving an unconscious Naruto with a huge, insane grin on his face. Looking at the bloodbath before him, then to the 7-year-old boy, Sarutobi could only say one thing. "Dear Kami Naruto, what have you done?" 1 year later. Sarutobi slowly made his way down the dark corridor, a man in a long white coat just a few paces behind. He wasn't in a rush. He didn't really want to be here at all. Not looking back at the man, he asked, "Has there been any progress?" The man didn't even slow down as he looked down at the clipboard in his hand. "I'm sorry, Hokage-sama, there has been no change since the last time you were here." Sarutobi just gave a nod and kept walking. The school was a depressing place. It was built underground and was designed for the express purpose of housing and rehabilitation of shinobi that couldn't cope with the stress or responsibilities of the job. Those that had let their guilt overwhelm them, or that had given in to their bloodlust. If a ninja had a mental breakdown, of any kind, they were sent here. On both sides of the corridor were solid steel doors with heavy locks and a small window so the workers and doctors could see into them. At the bottom of each door was a small locked hinge door. These were used to push food through. When he came to the last door in the corridor, he stopped. Taking a deep breath to calm his nerves, he looked through the small window in the door. It was more or less the same as all the other cells, white walls with a simple cot in the corner. What made this one stand out, however, was that the walls, floor, and roof were covered in blue glowing seals. They were the only source of light in the cell and made it look like something out of a horror movie. Another thing that made it stand out from the other cells was the fact that there was dried blood on the walls and floor along with the seals. And finally, the other thing that set this cell apart from the others was that it was the only one that didn't have a shinobi. This was the room of one Uzumaki Naruto. After what had happened with the Haruno woman, Sarutobi had done all he could to help Naruto. But when he started killing villagers, he'd had no other choice but to put him here. The seals were applied by his old student Jiraiya, who had been beside himself with rage when he heard about what had happened. They were designed to do two things. The first was to strengthen the walls of the cell, and the second was to constantly drain as much of Naruto's chakra as possible. It turned out that because of the amount of healing the Kyuubi had done to it, Naruto's body had been practically saturated in its chakra. This had resulted in Naruto gaining chakra reserves far beyond what was thought possible. If anyone other than Naruto was to go in that room with the seals active, they would be killed in a matter of seconds. As it was, they only seemed to make him slightly tired. When the boy had first been admitted, they had sent a Yamanaka to try and assess his mental state. That had been a mistake. He was now in the cell next to Naruto's. A few weeks later, a doctor had gone in to try to talk to the boy, and that was the source of the dried blood on the walls and floor. Looking into the room, Sarutobi started to panic when he didn't see anyone in the room. He was about to turn around to ask the doctor where Naruto was when he jumped back from the door, heart beating a mile a minuet, when a face appeared just on the other side of the glass. But it wasn't Naruto's. The face in the glass was that of a pale girl with long, messy black hair. She was so pale she had an almost blue shine to her skin, which was only accentuated by the glow of the seals. She had dark rings around her mouth and glowing orange eyes, a small smirk on her face as she looked at Sarutobi. Just looking at her sent shivers down the old Hokage's spine. "Stop playing games, Naruto. I'm not in the mood for it today." The girl's smirk turned into a full-blown grin at the old man's words, showing her slime-covered black teeth. "Oh, you don't want to play with me? That's not fair. The doctors are boring. They've seen most of what I can do. But you, I've got so much I can show you." Her voice sounded so innocent, like the tinkling of bells. It didn't seem right that a voice like that would come out of something so wrong. The Hokage didn't say anything, just stared into her bright orange eyes. Eventually, after the two had stared at each other for a few minuets, the girl broke eye contact and pouted. As the two men watched, they could see the face change into that of a blonde-haired, blue-eyed boy. His face covered in bandages. "You're no fun, old man." Turning his back to the door, Naruto walked away and jumped onto his cot in the corner. This gave them a good view of the boy. He had grown. When he was first brought here, he was barely 3 feet 5 inches. Now, he was 4 feet 6 inches, and still growing. He was very thin. No matter what the doctors gave him, he wouldn't put on weight. He was wearing a modified black straitjacket with a hood attached at the back of the neck, the sleeves hanging down past his arms, almost touching the floor. Plain black trousers going down to just above his bandaged feet. No skin could be seen. He just lay there, staring at the roof. Every now and then he would break out into chuckles, as if someone was telling him jokes that only he could hear. If only they knew. "How have you been, Naruto?" He didn't answer straight away, but when the Hokage was about to ask again, he spoke. "I am how I am, and I'm not how I'm not." More laughing. Sarutobi sighed again. He was used to this, getting roundabout answers that didn't really tell him anything. He was about to turn away when he heard Naruto call him back. "Hey, old man." "Yes, Naruto." As he looked back at the boy, he could see him trying to hold back more laughter. "What has no legs, no arms, and goes ahhhhhhhhhhh?" "Naruto." "Guess." "Stop it, Naruto." "Guess." Sarutobi was slightly taken aback by that. "I don't know, Naruto, what is it?" At this point, Naruto finally took his eyes off the roof and locked eyes with Sarutobi. "A villager after I pulled their limbs off." They kept eye contact for several more seconds before Naruto started laughing again. Without another word, Sarutobi turned around and left, the sound of Naruto's insane laughter following him down the corridor. 4 years later. 5 years. It had been 5 years since the incident. 5 years since Naruto had killed those people. And 5 years since he had no other choice but to put Naruto in the school. At least the new civilian council this time around didn't petition him every day to execute the QB brat. They still didn't like the boy. But after what had happened, they were at least neutral. He couldn't believe he let Danzo talk him into this. It was a big risk, but if it worked. Making his way down the corridor towards Naruto's cell, he couldn't help but hope the boy would agree. Looking into the room, it still surprised him just how much it took to keep the boy contained. When he was younger, it had been easy enough, just the seals around the room could stop him. Then they found out that there was a side effect to the seals, because they were on all the time, putting a constant strain on Naruto's coils. This resulted in his already unbelievable reserves growing even larger. So every year they needed to increase the security. The walls were the same, covered in seals and dried blood, but now there was no cot in the corner. Naruto was knelt in the center of the cell, with thick, black chains holding him into place bolted to the floor. The chains covered in the same seals as the walls. The boy looked up when he noticed Sarutobi standing there. He didn't say anything, just stared at him with that insane grin he had become so well known for. "How have you been, Naruto?" "I am how I am and I'm not how I'm not." This had become a routine for the two. It was almost enough to bring a smile to the old man's face. It was one of the few things Naruto did that didn't have any malicious intent behind it. "I have a proposition for you." At this, the boy got an odd look in his eye. This was different. After making sure he had Naruto's full attention, he continued. "You can't spend the rest of your life here, and the council agrees. So we have decided to offer you a chance to become a ninja of Konoha." There was a moment of silence before Naruto's grin spread even wider. "I'm listening." "You would need to behave. No killing, or mauling, civilian, clients, classmates, teammates, teachers or other shinobi of the leaf." "I think I could do that." This brought a smile to the old man's face. He had agreed. "Good, I will be back soon to take you to the academy to meet the other genin. As you don't know the academy jutsu, you will be allowed to skip the exam. Seeing as you are well, I don't think you will have a problem." As he turned to go and fill in the necessary paperwork, he stopped when Naruto asked him a question. "Hey, old man, I can still kill other ninja, right?" At the end of this, he was starting to chuckle to himself. Sarutobi thought about that for a moment before saying, "Yes, Naruto, you can kill other ninja." And with that he left, listening to Naruto's laughter and thinking about what he was about to unleash on the shinobi world. As Yumino Irika stood in front of his classroom, he could already feel the headache coming on. It was the last day, and they still wouldn't be quiet. Taking a big breath, he did the hand sign for his infamous big head jutsu. "Shut the hell up, you brats." Instantly everything went quiet. "That's better. Now, as you know, today is the day you are sorted into your 3-man teams. The problem with this is that we are 1 person short. However, the Hokage has found a suitable candidate, and will be bringing them here in a few minutes. So I want you all on your best behavior." At hearing that there would be someone new, the class burst into whispers. Whoever it was, if they were handpicked by the Hokage himself, then they must be strong. It even got the attention of one Uchiha Sasuke. "Finally, someone that might give me a challenge." It was at this point that Inuzuka Kiba decided to share his thoughts. "Wait a minute, what about the exam? We all took it, it's not fair if this new guy doesn't." "Calm down, Kiba, there are special circumstances that not even I know about. But when they get here, you can ask them yourself." That seemed to satisfy the boy for the time being. It was a few minutes later that a knock was heard at the door. The class fell silent again as Irika went to open it. "Welcome, Hokage-sama. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come." "It's no problem, Irika." After the old Hokage walked into the room, the class could see the boy stood behind him. He was tall, very tall, and skinny. At 6 feet 3 inches, he was the tallest 12-year-old any of them had ever seen. But because of the way he stood slightly hunched over, it was hard to tell. He had on a strange black jacket with what looked like buckles all over it, a hood sewed into the back of the neck, and sleeves that went down past his hands and to his knees. Long spiky blonde hair that went to just above his waist, and bandages covering any exposed flesh from view. The only parts of his face that could be seen were his blue eyes and his mouth that had a huge grin on his face. It actually unnerved them a little. It was at this point that they saw Irika. He was backed against the wall, staring at the boy in front of him with wide fear-filled eyes. Seeing his reaction, Sarutobi told the now clearly terrified man. "Don't worry, Irika, Naruto has promised me he will behave himself." This did calm the man a little. If there was one thing known about the boy, it was that he has never broken his word. It was a mystery. No matter how insane he was, he still had some kind of moral code. Unfortunately, nobody knew what most of it was except the boy and maybe the Hokage. But he was still not sure this was a good idea. "Are you sure, Hokage-sama?" "Very, you have nothing to worry about, isn't that right, Naruto?" "Naruto?" When the boy didn't answer, the old man turned to face the boy. But he wasn't there. Quickly looking around, he spotted the boy crouched on a desk staring down at Sasuke, their faces only inches apart. The class and Irika were stunned. They hadn't even seen him move. When Sasuke had gotten over his own shock, he asked in a clearly irritated voice, "What are you looking at?" Naruto just kept staring. When Sasuke had enough, he was about to ask again, and that was when Naruto asked, "Did you know you have a duck ass on your head?" At this, the class burst out laughing, all except for the Uchiha and a few of his fangirls. But when Sasuke made a grab at him, he was already back next to the Hokage. "Naruto, you said you would behave." Naruto turned his face to look at him, and replied, "No, I said I wouldn't kill, maim, or permanently break them. You never said anything about behaving." The class was shocked at his words, to talk about such things without any hesitation. What the hell was wrong with this guy? Sarutobi took a deep breath, then let it out slowly. At least he didn't kill anyone yet. "Just introduce yourself so we can move on, please." "Whatever, old man." Shocking the class yet again at his disrespect. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto. I like what I like and I hate what I hate, though nothing I hate seems to be around for long when I hate it." After saying this, he broke out into giggles. "I don't have a dream or goal in my life, because quite frankly, I don't actually have any will to live, ha ha ha." After seeing their faces when he said this, he couldn't hold it in any longer, he laughed. With the introduction out of the way, Naruto just sat on the floor where he was. Deciding to humor him, the Hokage nodded to Irika to continue with the team placements. "Alright, well then. Team 1 will be comprised of..." It went on like that for several minutes. Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Haruno Sakura and Inuzuka Kiba under Hatake Kakashi. When Irika had said her name, Sakura had jumped up screaming about true love. It was then that Naruto saw her, and grinned wider. When Sakura had calmed down, Irika had continued. Team 8, Hyuga Hinata, Aburame Shino and Uzumaki Naruto, under Yuhi Kurenai. And finally, Team 10, Akimichi Choji, Nara Shikamaru and Yamanaka Ino under Sarutobi Asuma. When he finished reading out the names, he put down the list and said, "I want you to know that I am proud of all of you and that I expect great things from you all, and remember, you are all shinobi of the leaf now. That is a big responsibility. I trust you to act accordingly. Your new instructors will be here soon to pick you up." And with that, both Irika and the Hokage left the room, Irika looking back over his shoulder as he went, then closing the door behind him. Leaving the class alone with Naruto. They all looked at him for a moment. And he just looked back with that huge grin on his face. "I think I'm going to enjoy this." Yuhi Kurenai was a beautiful woman. No one could or would argue with that. She was an average height at 5 feet 6 inches, with long brown hair that cascaded down her back and a wonderful figure that was the envy of almost every woman in Konoha. Her clothes were made of what appeared to be bandages, with one red sleeve, white shorts and a mesh undershirt. She wore almost no makeup, just some red lipstick and blue eyeshadow, and with her exotic red eyes she was without a doubt one of the most beautiful ninja in the village. She was also very nervous. Even if the Hokage had assured her that he was somewhat safe to be around, she was still nervous. Flashback 5 hours earlier. "Hokage-sama, you can't be serious. That boy is dangerous." Kurenai had an incredulous look on her face. Maybe the old man's age was finally catching up to him. They were currently in the Hokage office, and that he had just told her that Naruto would be on her genin team. She knew of the boy, hell, everyone knew of him. She didn't blame him for being the QB container. If anything, she felt sorry for him. But he was put in the school for a reason. "Kurenai, calm down, I know what I am doing. Do you think that I would put your other students at risk? Despite what many think, he is not as dangerous as the villagers would like you to believe. With all due respect, he was put in the school for a reason, Hokage-sama. He killed innocent people. How could you say he is not as dangerous as they say? Sarutobi looked at her for a long minuet before he sighed. Kurenai, I'm disappointed in you. Those words shocked her, but before she could say anything he continued. As a ninja you should always look underneath the underneath. And as an intelligence gatherer you should know better than to listen to hearsay from a group of bitter villagers. Did it ever occur to you that if those villagers were innocent that Naruto would have been put to death? Kurenai's eyes widened at the implications. But if that's true, I don't understand. I thought you put him in the school because he was dangerous? I did, but at the time there were too many holes, too many things that didn't add up, so I looked into it further. It turns out that Naruto, in the few weeks leading up to him being put in the school, never technically did anything wrong. Kurenai was about to object to this, but again the Hokage continued before she could. In the case of Ms. Haruno, self-defense, there was never any doubt about that, but the others. Here Sarutobi took out his pipe and lit it, taking a deep breath before he continued. The three men, self-defense, turns out they were drunk and attacked him. The two men and the ally, it was later found out that they had been attempting to rape a young girl. Naruto stopped them. The orphanage's care workers, we found out they were selling children into slavery outside the village. Every one of the people Naruto killed was later found to have either attacked him first or found guilty of crimes. Kurenai didn't know what to say. How could she have been pulled in by the villagers so easily? She prided herself on her ninja skills. But this was a huge mistake on her part. But then something occurred to her. But Hokage-sama, if this is true, then why was he kept in the school? Surely he should have been released when this was found out. Why did you leave him there? At this question the Hokage got a sad look in his eyes. Because he asked me to. Again, Kurenai was shocked. Nobody asked to be kept in the school. But why? Sarutobi took another deep breath from his pipe before letting it out again. At that point Naruto still had some semblance of his old self. He still does, though it's buried under the insanity. In a moment of lucidity he realized what was happening to him. He could see what was happening and knew that if he didn't get away from people for a while he could lose himself completely. So he asked to be left in the school until I thought he could be trusted. I have watched him over the years, and I can honestly say that although he is the most insane fucker I know, he is also one of my most trusted people. At seeing the confused look on the young woman's face he elaborated. It is true that Naruto is insane, but he has still kept what makes him a good person. It is what makes him different from many that lose their minds. He has morals, they can be hard to see, but they are there. He never hurts children, scare them, yes, but never hurt them. He also has a respect for women, which all things considered is a miracle. He also will never break a promise once it has been made. Kurenai didn't know what to say. Naruto just didn't make any sense to her. However, this made her stop her train of thought. There is a problem. He can't control himself when he kills. He will make anyone that he deems worth killing go through extreme pain before he will let them die. He has been known to scare Enbu with his methods, both psychological and physical. That worried Kurenai. Enbu were trained to be fearless, to not let anything bother them. The best of the best. And they were scared of what a 12-year-old boy could do. Taking a deep breath, Kurenai asked. Can you tell me anything about his abilities? If he is going to be on my team, I need to know what to expect. This made Sarutobi smile. He has enhanced senses, strength, reflexes, and he is able to process information at an astonishing rate. He has been out of the school for only a day and has already made his way through most of the Konoha library. This surprised Kurenai. To be able to read and understand so much information in such a short time was truly amazing. He also has a bloodline. It has been designated as shapeshifter. He is able to become almost anything. If he can picture it in his mind, he can more than likely become it. It is similar to the transformation jutsu. But unlike the transformation jutsu, he physically changes his body. The implications of this were spinning through Kurenai's head. To be able to become anything, the potential was practically limitless. However, there is a catch. The longer he uses it, the harder it is to keep it up, or in some cases, to come back. From what he has told me, he is currently able to hold a basic shift, as he called it, for 3 days, but the more complex it is, the harder it gets. This made perfect sense to Kurenai. With every bloodline there was always a weakness. She also now understood why he was on her team. With a bloodline to change into anything, he could make a great intelligent gatherer, and with his other talents, he could cover the rest of them if the need to retreat should occur. She was broken out of her thoughts when the Hokage stood up from his chair. I'm sorry, Kurenai, but I need to go and check on him now, before he runs out of books to read and moves on to something else. I hope I can trust you to teach your future students to the best of your ability. Standing up from her chair, Kurenai did a small bow to her leader and replied, Yes, Hokage-sama, I understand. Flashback end. She was now on her way to meet her team with the other senseis and just couldn't stop herself from feeling nervous, only for them to stop at the door when they heard the voices inside the room. They all sat in silence for a few minutes, just staring at the strange boy in front of them. He was just sitting there, looking around the room with that creepy grin on his face. Eventually Kiba, being the hyperactive loudmouth he is, took it upon himself to break it. Standing up from his seat, he made his way to the front of the room where Naruto was sat, smirking to himself, not seeing Akamaru shrinking back into his hood and shaking slightly. So you're the guy that's too good to go to the academy like the rest of us. You don't look so strong. I bet you don't even know any jutsu. Naruto just sat there for a moment, looking up at Kiba. Slowly, standing up, he looked Kiba in the eyes and asked, What's a jutsu? The other children in the room looked at Naruto incredulously. What kind of ninja didn't know what a jutsu was? Kiba started laughing and pointing at Naruto, and then so did the rest of the class. You don't even know what jutsu is, huh? Where have you been for the past few years? A mental institution for dangerously insane ninja. That turned the laughter into shocked silence. Was he serious? What the hell? You're joking, right? Nope. Hey, did you know you need a bath? You smell like dog piss. This got to Kiba. Nobody embarrasses him in front of his class. What did you say? I'll fucking kill you. In his rage, Kiba charged at Naruto without thinking. But before Kiba could lay a hand on him, Naruto had his right hand on the back of Kiba's head and was slamming it into the ground, or so it seemed. Just before Kiba's face connected, it stopped. Bending down, Naruto said to him, loud enough for all to hear, I have killed people for attacking me, and the only reason I haven't killed you is because I promised the old man I wouldn't. Think yourself lucky. And with that he let Kiba fall to the ground, his grin still on his face. Kiba shuffled away as quick as possible, and then made his way back to his seat. The room was quiet again, no one knowing what to say after that. What no one expected though was for Sakura to slowly make her way over to Naruto, trying to tell her old friend to come back. When she was in front of him, she asked, You said your name was Naruto? At his nod, she continued, My dad said that if I was ever to meet you to say that we are sorry for my mother's actions to you and to ask for forgiveness, but he never said why. She let the question hang, hoping he would explain. Naruto just gave her an odd look for a minuet, before his grin faded into a genuine smile. Thank you, and tell your father that there is nothing to forgive, her actions were her own, and I hold no grudge against you or your family. At hearing this, Sakura let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. As for what she did, I can honestly say that your mother made me what I am today. When he said this, his grin returned in full force. It sent a shiver up her spine, as well as all those in the room, but before anyone could comment further on this, the door opened and a group of people walked into the room. One by one they introduced themselves as the senseis and took their respective teams out of the room. Teammate, I'm your Jounin sensei, Yohi Kurenai. Please follow me. With that, Shino, Hinata and Naruto followed her out of the room. They said nothing on their way to the training ground, all lost in their own thoughts. Shino and Hinata didn't know what to think of the boy. He seemed strong, but from what they had seen he was completely out of his mind. Kurenai was trying not to smile. She had heard everything that had gone on in the room and was happy to know that he didn't hold a grudge. Or kill the Inuzuka boy for that matter. And Naruto was thinking, I wonder what that tree tastes like. When they had come to training ground 8, Kurenai motioned for them to sit down. When they were all seated, she spoke. Right, my name is Yuhi Kurenai. I am 24 years old and am going to be your new sensei. I specialize in genjutsu and my dream is to prove that women can be just as good ninja as men. Now who wants to introduce themselves next? Shino raised his hand and began to speak in a monotone. My name is Abirain Shino and I am 12 years old. I specialize in my clan's jutsu and hope to prove that my clan is not weak just because we use bugs. Nodding at this, Kurenai turned to Hinata. I am Hyuga Hinata. I am T12 years old and ISP specialize in my CL clan's jutsu. I hope to one day unite my clan. Hearing the stutter, Kurenai made a note to introduce the girl to Anko. If anyone could break her of it, it would be her. Turning to her last student, she was surprised to see him tuning a violin. Where the hell had he got a violin? After a minuet, he seemed satisfied and spoke. My name is Uzumaki Naruto, and I am 12 years old. I specialize in infiltration and torture, and am currently learning several other things as well. I have nothing I wish to accomplish. At hearing that he was learning other things, Kurenai got interested. What other things are you learning? Looking back up at her from his violin, he said. Well, weapon crafting, seal making, jutsu making, and a few different fighting styles that I plan to merge together into my own personal style. Kurenai and the two genin didn't know what to think. Most ninja picked a specialty and stuck with it, but here was Naruto looking at several different aspects like it was nothing. While they stared at him, Naruto had started to play his violin, which, considering his hands were still covered by his sleeves, was impressive. Kurenai didn't know what he was playing. It started off slow but was slowly getting quicker. It was then that Kurenai felt it, the feeling of someone casting a genjutsu. Naruto was channeling huge amount of chakra into the music to act as a wide-scale genjutsu. Smiling to herself, she discreetly cancelled its effects on herself, but not the others. Naruto was doing her job for her. Her test was to see if they could detect and dispel a genjutsu anyway, so why not let him do it? As she watched, she saw Hinata and Shino fall into some kind of trance. A few minuets later, Shino was the first to notice something was wrong, his bugs telling him that he was in a genjutsu. Calmly putting his hand on Hinata's shoulder, he broke them both out of the genjutsu. When she was sure they were both out of the jutsu, Kurenai said, Good work, Shino, and well done for helping your teammate out, but I have to ask Naruto, why did you try to put us in a genjutsu in the first place? When she asked this, Naruto stopped playing and looked at her strangely. What the hell you talking about? I can't cast a genjutsu to save my life. I've got too much chakra. This surprised Kurenai. He was right, he did have too much chakra to do genjutsu, but she had assumed that was why he was using a violin as a catalyst. But he was doing it without even knowing it. She would have to talk to the Hokage about this. Naruto, are you saying you didn't know you were channeling chakra through your violin while you were playing it? Of course I was, it's something I read in a book about chakra control. This is actually my 5th violin in the last day, they kept exploding. Had to put a reinforcement seal on this one. The casual way that he said this made her laugh. As if exploding violins were normal, although, this was Naruto after all, who knew what went on in his head. Hinata and Shino were confused, so asked. WWW, what do you mean, Kurenai sensei? I agree, I don't understand. Turning to face the two, Kurenai said. It's quite simple really, Naruto here was channeling chakra through his violin, and it acted like a catalyst for a genjutsu. Without knowing he was doing it, the genjutsu acted on its own and hypnotized us. None of the genin knew what to say to that. Then Naruto started to laugh. When he had calmed down, Kurenai told them. Now, normally this would be where I give you your true genin exam, but seeing as Naruto beat me to it, you all pass. Congratulations, you are all now official genin of Konoha. Meet me here tomorrow at 6 a.m., and we can start your training. With that, the 3 genin left to do their own things. Letting out a deep breath, Kurenai stood up and left to report to the Hokage. She never noticed that Naruto had come back to the training grounds. Walking up to the tree he had seen earlier, he pulled a branch off and bit into it. Yuck! Tastes like wood. Kurenai was at her wit's end. This was her team's 4th D rank and Naruto was driving them all crazy. Their first mission had been to paint a civilian's house. It went okay at first, but the problem came when the client's wife came home and saw Naruto. By the time her husband had calmed her down and took her into the house, nobody noticed that Naruto had painted the house bright pink instead of the white the client had supplied them with. They still didn't know where he got the damn paint. The second mission had been to weed an old lady's garden. This had gone fine until she refused to pay Naruto. While Kurenai had been arguing with her, Naruto had replaced all her plants with cannabis. And yet again, they still didn't know where he got the plants, though Kurenai was more worried at the thought of a high Naruto. The third had been to catch Tora. this had actually gone okay. Seems Naruto had a way with animals. He had been the first ever ninja to just walk up to Tora and pick him up. The problem had come when he left with the little beast for a while. Nobody knew what he did, but after the mission it became a lot harder to catch the cat when it escaped again. One Genin team had claimed that they had seen him jumping through the trees like a ninja. This mission was simple: get the shopping for a woman that had broken her leg. The problem had come when she had given Naruto a dirty look. At the time the boy had just ignored her, but his team had got to know him over the past few weeks and knew he was going to do something. This was why Kurenai was watching him like a hawk. So far everything was fine. They had just gotten back to the client's house without incident, and were just waiting for their pay. When the client had been paying them, she had gave Naruto another dirty look and tried to give him half what she owed him. The feeling of dread that had increased when Naruto didn't say anything, just stood there grinning. A few minutes later they had gotten the money and were on their way to report to the Hokage when they heard a scream from inside the house. Rushing back inside, they had arrived to see the woman sitting on the floor, covered in bright red paint. Naruto had somehow put a paint bomb in her shopping bags when they weren't looking. Letting out a deep breath, Kurenai and the other two Genin started to help her off the floor and to a chair in the living room. The whole time Naruto was laughing his head off, rolling around on the floor. It took them an hour to calm her down. Now here they were stood in front of the Hokage in his office. For a full minuet he said nothing, just sat there looking at Naruto with his pipe in hand. "I thought we talked about this, Naruto. You can't keep attacking clients." Naruto just stood there, giggling. Well, technically she wasn't a client when it went off. We had finished the mission. None of them knew what to say to this. He was right. They had finished the mission. Sighing to himself, Sarutobi just waved a hand for them to leave. "Whatever, I'm getting too old for this shit, just go." With that they left to go to the training grounds. Team 8 had decided to hold off on missions for a while, at least until they could stop Naruto from being Naruto. Kurenai, Hinata and Shino were currently waiting for Naruto at Training Ground 8. It was one of the more secluded training grounds. With a large lake and small wooded area, it was a good place to train. Today Kurenai was planning to teach Hinata and Shino how to water walk. She would have been teaching Naruto it as well, but he was having problems with tree walking. The last time he tried, he was blown off so hard he not only broke the tree he was trying to walk on, but 3 other trees as well when he flew into them. For some reason Naruto was always a few minutes late to team training. After waiting for a little longer they decided to start without him. It was half an hour later when Naruto walked into the training grounds, a strange bundle on his back. This put them all on edge. Though Naruto had never done anything to them, they were still cautious. When he got to them he put the bundle down and waved. "Hey guys, I got you something." Slowly making their way over they looked at the bundle on the floor nervously. Seeing their faces, Naruto laughed. "Don't worry so much, it's not going to explode, at least I don't think they will," he said with a thoughtful look on his face. This did not fill them with confidence. Reaching down and unfolding the package, Naruto took a step back and looked at them all expectantly. "So what do you think?" They didn't really know what to think. On the ground before them were the most bizarre yet beautiful weapons any of them had ever seen. The first was what looked like a normal kunai knife. But when you looked closely you could see that it was a lot smaller and streamlined than most. It was also attached to some kind of leather straps by a length of ninja wire. The knife itself was also covered in strange markings that they soon realized were seals carved perfectly into the metal. The next was a long metal pipe, about 3 feet in length, with a small needle-like point. On closer inspection they realized that it was hollow, and that there was a small hole in the end. This was also attached to leather straps and was covered in similar seals as the first. The last was a pair of elegant gauntlets. The metal was white and the middle finger had a sharp, pin-like point in the end. They were designed to go up to just below the elbows and had seals all over them. After a while Kurenai looked at Naruto and said, "They are beautiful, Naruto, but where did you get them and why did you bring them?" Naruto gave her one of his rare, sincere smiles when she asked that. "Well, remember when I said that I was looking into weapon making?" They all grow shocked looks on their faces when he said this. "You mean you made these?" "Yep, I made a deal with a smith in the village. I get to use his workshop and I let him look over some of my designs. Nice guy, open-minded." Naruto seemed to get lost in his own mind for a moment before he continued. Anyway, I brought them here because I made them for you guys. We've been a team for a while now and I made you these to complement your fighting styles. For example. Here he bent down and picked up the kunai-like weapon and, taking on a lecturing tone that was so out of place coming from Naruto, started to explain the weapons. This is for you, sensei. It goes on your arm under your sleeve. Now I know that when you cast a genjutsu you can't move from one spot without disrupting your flow of chakra. So I made you this. By channeling your chakra through the wire and to the blade at the end you can control it. It will take a lot of practice, but when you master it you should be able to cast genjutsu and kill your enemies without having to rely on someone to make the finishing blow. Kurenai was speechless. Naruto had made this just for her. It was perfect. He had made her the perfect weapon after only knowing her for less than 2 months. Before she could thank him, he moved on to the pipe. Now this is for Shino, and if it works out, your family. The pipe is made from a strong metal to compensate for it being hollow, and can retract so it can't be seen. Like sensei's, it goes on your arm under your sleeve. The idea is that you can have some of your bugs fill the pipe, and when you stab someone you can inject them into your opponent. I know that your clan can't fight in close combat because of your bugs, so this should help. Shino was deeply impressed with the weapon. He guessed that he shouldn't be surprised. It would take someone with a mind like Naruto's to come up with something as unorthodox as this. And last but certainly not least, this is for Hinata. Like the others, I made it to go with your family's fighting style. They are mostly designed for protection, but they can, in theory, enhance your gentle fist. By channeling chakra into the needle it can give your chakra a boost. If it works like I think it will, you will be able to actually destroy someone's chakra points. This actually shocked Hinata. Her family had been trying to improve the gentle fist for years to the point that they could destroy a person's chakra points, and here was Naruto, the most insane ninja anyone had ever known, solving what her entire clan couldn't. It was then that he explained the seals. Now, as for the whole not sure of them exploding thing, the seals are your basic strengthening seals, with something of my own thrown in. Chakra channeling seals. I made them to help you channel your chakra through the metal. The only thing is I haven't tested them. This surprised Kurenai more than the weapons. She knew that he was looking into seals, but never thought he would come so far in so little time. This is great, Naruto, but why did you go to so much trouble? Naruto just looked at each of them for a moment, then. Why the hell not? And with that the serious Naruto was gone and back was random Naruto. When they had gotten up after face planting, they each thanked him and asked if he had made anything for himself. His grin took on an unnerving glint, and he reached behind his back and pulled out 2 wicked-looking, miniature scythes, hidden behind his long hair. The handles looked like they fitted his hands perfectly, and were wrapped in black leather. The blades themselves were stained a deep black that seemed like it didn't reflect any light, and the edge a deep, blood red, with jagged teeth instead of being straight. They had the same seals as the other weapons etched into them, but they were almost impossible to see. They actually sent shivers down their spines just looking at them. They held a terrible beauty that left no doubt that they were made to take life. These are my scythes. No one said anything for a few minutes, the blades seeming to weigh down the area with their own killing intent. Which was promptly broken by Naruto falling over and laughing so hard it looked painful. When she saw he had finally calmed down, Kurenai spoke. Well, thank you Naruto, these are all great, but I think Hinata and Shino should finish the water walking exercises before learning how to use them. The extra control will help, I'm sure. Shrugging his shoulders, Naruto just put his scythes away and ran to a tree. Only to fly past them and into the water when he was blown off again. As they watched him get up and do the same thing over and over again, Shino summed up their thoughts perfectly. It's hard to tell if he is a genius or an idiot sometimes. Nodding their heads in agreement, they all turned back to the lake, their new weapons in place, and started the exercise again. Naruto's laughter echoing around the clearing as he was continually blasted off the trees. It had been a month since Team 8 had gotten their weapons. And ever since then they couldn't be any closer. Hinata and Shino had finished water walking in record time, wanting to start training with their new weapons. Kurenai was starting to get the hang of her straight shooter, as Naruto had decided to call it. She still had some work to do, but she was getting there. He didn't name the others, saying that they could do it themselves with their families. Speaking of which, both the Hyuga and Aburame clans had been very impressed with the weapons, so much so that they had requested for Naruto to make more for them. He had told them of a small ninja shop owned by a man named Higashi. It turned out this was the man Naruto had made the deal to use his workshop with. Naruto had given him the designs after he made them in case this happened, as long as he got 30% of the profits, and that he tell nobody who made them, Higashi could remake and sell them to the two clans. This applied to the clans as well. When Kurenai asked why he didn't want anyone to know he made them, she could have sworn he was channeling his inner Nara when he said, "Too bloody troublesome." It turns out this was more than sufficient, as the clans were paying a small fortune for the weapons. The Hyugas had named Hinata's weapon the Hands of Kami, as they believed their eyes were a gift from Kami herself. The Aburame had been a bit more modest and named theirs Wasp Point. Higashi and his daughter were making so much money from Naruto's weapons they were thinking of expanding the shop. Naruto, after many times of being shot off the trees like a cannon, had finally got the hang of tree walking. He even managed to learn water walking. Eventually Team 8 started doing missions again. Thankfully Naruto had not done anything to the clients, seems the word had gotten out, and none dared to do anything to raise the boys' ire. They were currently stood in the Hokage office, after just returning Tora to the daimyo's wife. He was looking at their mission record to decide if they were ready for a C rank mission. Well, everything seems to be in order, I see no reason. Before he could finish, the doors to the office slammed open and Kiba stormed in, followed by the rest of Team 7 walked in. "Hey, Hokage-sama, can we please get AC rank now? These D ranks are driving me and Akamaru crazy." After an apology from Kakashi for Kiba's rudeness, Team 7 noticed Team 8 stood in the room staring at them. Kakashi's eye lingered on Naruto for a moment before moving to Kurenai. "Sorry Kurenai-chan, hope we didn't disturb you." Before Kurenai could answer, she was drowned out by Naruto. "Duck ass. Dog piss. Pinky. How you been?" Everyone in the room sweat dropped at this except the three genin, who were silently steaming at the names. When they had calmed down, the Hokage spoke. Well, Team 7 does have the necessary number of D ranks to take AC. How about this? I was just about to give Team 8 here AC rank. What would you say to a joint mission? The two senseis looked at each other for a moment before nodding. Very well, seeing as Team 8 were here first, Kurenai will be team leader. The mission is to protect a bridge builder named Tazuna while he travels to Wave Country and until he finishes his bridge. The client will be here shortly. No sooner had he said this than an old man walked into the room on unsteady feet. He had a beard, glasses, and smelt like sake. He looked at the genin and scowled. "I pay good money for a ninja guard and you give me this? And what the hell is the mummy grinning at?" At these words 4 loud smacks were heard. Looking around the room, Team 7 saw the Hokage, Kurenai, Shino, and Hinata with their hands on their faces. And Naruto's grin taking on a sinister edge. Both Team 8 and 7 were stood at the front gates of Konoha, waiting for Tazuna to show up so they could leave. After what Tazuna had said the day before, the Hokage had quickly dismissed them and told them when to be here to go. The two teams were keeping their distance from each other, mostly because of Naruto. Speaking of Naruto, both Kurenai and Kakashi were worried what he would do, his track record speaking for itself. They knew he wouldn't actually kill Tazuna, but beyond that they didn't know. They didn't have to wait long. Right on time they could see Tazuna heading their way. He had the same clothes and smell as the day before, but he was able to walk in a straight line. His eyes were red and he was clearly suffering from a monster hangover. As he approached, Kurenai cast a nervous eye over to Naruto. He was just stood there, grinning at Tazuna. Not breaking his stride, the old man walked right past them and through the gate. Nodding to their teams, Kurenai and Kakashi followed after him. They were about an hour away from the village when Naruto started to walk next to the old drunk. They spoke in low voices for a moment when Naruto pulled out a small silver flask. Handing it to Tazuna, he took the lid off and had taken a swig before anyone could stop him. Giving the flask back to the boy, he stood there a moment, all eyes on him. Then his eyes went wide. He opened his mouth and they could all see smoke coming out. It was shortly after this that all the strength left his legs and he fell over. Bending down and lifting the old man onto his shoulder, laughing the whole time, Naruto started to continue heading towards Wave. Walking up to her student, Kurenai asked, "What the hell was in that flask, Naruto?" This caused Naruto to laugh louder, before answering. "Don't worry, he'll wake up in 10 minutes. I gave him my homemade hangover cure. Haha, did you see the smoke?" All the ninja present just sweat dropped at the insane boy's antics. Naruto, if this is to get rid of his hangover, then why in the name of Kami is he unconscious? What the hell is in that stuff? Turning around and walking backwards so he was facing them, Naruto got a thoughtful look on his face. Well, let me think. A few herbs, some spices, wasabi, chili powder, and some strange fish I found in the lake at the training grounds. Again they all sweat dropped. Luckily for them, they were getting used to Naruto, well, as used to him as one could get anyway. They were actually surprised when, exactly 10 minutes later, Tazuna's eyes shot open and he started to run around holding his throat. After being given water, he turned to Kurenai and said in a dry voice, "What the hell did I just fucking drink?" Shaking her head, she just said, "You don't want to know." It was then that Naruto made his appearance. "So drunk, how's the head?" Turning to face the boy to yell at him, Tazuna suddenly realized that his hangover was gone. Without saying anything, Tazuna started walking again, not looking at Naruto. As he passed Kakashi, they could all hear him mumbling about stupid mummies and not warning him. That night they had decided to set up camp in a small clearing about 30 feet away from the footpath. Not much had happened since Naruto had so kindly helped Tazuna with his hangover, though the old drunk had refused to say anything since. It was shortly after they had finished setting up their tents that they noticed that Naruto didn't set one up for himself. Sakura, being the ever-curious person she was, took it upon herself to ask him where his tent was. The answer shocked them all and even got Tazuna's attention. "Don't need one. My body produces so much raw chakra that it converts any I don't use into energy. I don't actually need to sleep more than an hour or so a week if I don't use any." None of them knew what to say to this. To have so much chakra that you didn't need to sleep was unheard of. Just how much chakra do you have exactly?" Thinking for a moment, Naruto considered how best to answer. "Well, according to the old man, about 13 times more than any Kage known to have ever lived. But I can't actually use most of it because I can't control it." Even Tazuna was shocked at this. He might not be a ninja, but even he knew not to mess with the Kage. They all sat in silence after that, staring into the smokeless fire. After a few more minuets of this, Naruto reached behind his back and pulled out his violin. Without looking at any of the others in the clearing, he started to play. The music was soft and gentle, calm, the complete opposite of the one playing it, Naruto's face taking on a serene look as he played. They sat and listened to the boy play, watching the fire as it seemed to dance in the night. They were spellbound, none could move as they listened. But as the night went on, they knew that they needed to go to sleep. One by one they all got up and went to their tents to sleep. The sound of Naruto's violin the last thing they heard as they drifted off. None of them saw the single tear that trailed down Naruto's face as he played into the night. The next day they had all woke up to the sight of Naruto, leaning over a small pile of dead rabbits. After they ate and packed up camp, they were on their way. The atmosphere was a lot calmer today. They were spread out in a loose formation, and you could hear Sakura talking to Tazuna about wave country. It was then that the two Jonin noticed a puddle in the road ahead. The sight of it made Kurenai's blood boil. Such a poor attempt at a genjutsu. Looking at each other, the two senseis silently agreed to let the genin handle it. They didn't have to wait long. As soon as they passed the puddle, 2 men in brown cloaks jumped out and wrapped a battle chain around them. The genin and Tazuna turned around just in time to see their sensei fall to the ground in bloody pieces. 2 down. 6 to go. After saying this, the 2 ninjas started to run toward them, chain at the ready. Team 7 froze at the words, not knowing what to do. Luckily, Team 8 did. Shino and Hinata were in front of Tazuna as soon as they saw what happened, and Naruto had moved to intercept, pulling out his scythe from on his back as he went. Before the 2 ninja had went 2 meters towards them, he was there. With his back turned to the others, they didn't see his grin turn predatory, but the demon brothers did. It stopped them in their tracks. This boy had the same grin as him. They were brought out of their thoughts by the insane giggling and words laced in killing intent. "Let's have fun, don't die too quick." That was all it took to anger the brothers. Who did this kid think he was? Yelling in rage, the 2 ran straight at the boy, intending to wrap him in their chain. But before they could, a kunai pinned it to a nearby tree. As they struggled to get the chain free, Naruto turned to Sasuke. Don't interfere with my fun. Do that again and I will rip out your eyes and shove them up your fucking ass. None of the genin knew what to say. They had never seen Naruto like this. His grin was still in place, but his voice was hard. But that wasn't all. When he turned to face the group, they all saw his features taking on an almost demonic look. His teeth were longer and sharper, and his eyes sank back into his head. Turning back to his prey, Naruto was just in time to see them detach the chain from their gauntlets and charge at him again. What followed was one of the most odd kinjutsu battles any of them had ever seen. His grin stretching painfully large, Naruto switched the scythe in his left hand to a reverse grip and started to spin while moving to meet them. Every time one of the brothers got within striking range, they would be pushed back, and before long they were on the defense instead of Naruto. As his spins got faster and faster, they had a harder time to block and dodge. Small cuts started to appear all over their bodies, and their movements started to get more and more sluggish. 10 minuets into the fight, and the demon brothers dropped to the ground, their entire bodies littered with small, paper-cut-like marks. When he saw that they couldn't fight anymore, Naruto stopped his rotations. He was a bit unsteady on his feet for a moment, but quickly got over it, put his scythes away and tied them up with ninja wire. Seeing that Naruto was finished, the two thought-dead sensei stepped out of the woods. After explaining how they had gotten away with the substitution jutsu, they turned to congratulate Naruto, only to see him positioning the brothers in a way that they could see each other. When they were about to ask him what he was doing, he spoke. Now, which one of you is the brain? You look like the man with the plan. So, you going to tell me why you attacked us? The only answer he got was the man spitting on the ground at his feet. Naruto's grin turned malicious, and without saying a word he turned to the other brother. When he was within arm reach, he spoke again. I was hoping you would say that. Lifting his hand up for all to see, he made his fingers change, turning into long, thin, worm-like creatures. Seeing what the boy was planning, Kurenai quickly cast a genjutsu on the genin and Tazuna so they went blind. But she forgot to make them deaf, so they could all hear the man's muffled screams as Naruto lowered his hand to his head, and the worms made their way into his mouth, nose, and even under his skin. They could see his skin start to move as the worms spread. Staring in horror at his younger brother, the ninja could only watch as the lines moving under his skin seemed to go into a frenzy. Then, without warning, he stopped screaming and his entire body except for his head exploded in a shower of blood. Turning back to the, now terrified ninja, Naruto slowly made his way over, grinning insanely. Alright. I'll tell you anything you want. For the next few minuets he told them everything, about Gato, Zabuza, everything he knew. When he was done, Naruto took out one of his scythes, walked up to him and slit his throat in such a way that it took him several minuets to bleed to death. When the light left his eyes, Naruto used his scythe to cut off the head. When he was done, Naruto took a sealing scroll from his bag and sealed both the severed heads into it. The blood on his clothes seemed to melt into them, and within minuets he was clean. Kurenai and Kakashi just stared at Naruto, not sure what to think. It was the first time either of them had seen Naruto's bloodline in action, and it scared them what he could do with it. Walking past Naruto, Kakashi did a quick fire jutsu to get rid of what was left of the bodies. Kurenai waited until there was nothing left before she released her jutsu. After a quick talk with Tazuna, they decided to continue the mission. For the next few hours before they set up camp for the night, no one said a word. Every now and then they would sneak glances at the blonde when they thought he wasn't looking. None of the genin knew exactly what Naruto had done, but they knew from the screams it was bad. Kiba could still smell the blood that clung to Naruto like a blanket. Shortly after they finished setting up, Naruto left. About an hour later he came back, hair wet and with a deer slung over his shoulder, the smell of blood still strong but from the deer instead of him. They all watched quietly as Naruto sat down on a nearby rock away from the fire and started to skin and prepare the meat from the deer with a small knife he had got from his bag, every so often throwing a piece into the wood to unseen animals that had been attracted by the smell of blood. It was a clear night and the moon was full, casting an eerie glow on the insane boy as he did his work, humming to himself as he went. When he finished that, he went on to stripping the bark off of several branches to cook the meat over the fire. Not being able to stand the silence anymore, Kiba spoke in a quiet voice, drawing the attention of all those present. What the hell did you do to them back there? They only had small cuts. Why did they stop? Naruto, turning to face the dog-like boy, his usual grin in place, answered. Have you ever got a paper cut? Seeing the boy nod his head, he continued. They hurt, don't they? Something so small, yet they can hurt as much as a kunai to the gut. Imagine having your entire body covered in them, your face, arms, legs, torso, small cuts all over your body. What do you think would happen? It was Sasuke that answered first. It would start to slow you down, then the more cuts you get, the more pain. You can't fight if you are too focused on the pain. Turning his grin to Sasuke, Naruto nodded. Exactly, and when the pain gets too much, your body stops on its own, leaving you completely vulnerable. This time it was Kakashi to ask the question. Where did you learn that? I've never heard of anyone fighting like you did, the spinning, the precise aim so you only broke the skin when you cut. It seems like the perfect style for capturing an opponent, while causing the most amount of pain, while at the same time it could be turned into a full-on offensive at a moment's notice, capable of quickly overpowering anyone that doesn't know how to counter. Naruto just nodded at the assessment of his style. Yep, sounds about right. I'm still working a few bugs out of it, but that pretty much sums it up, and I didn't learn it, I made it. This didn't surprise Team 8 as much as the others. They had gotten used to Naruto, and the way he seemed brilliant one minuet, and like an idiot the next. Nothing more was said for a while after that. Team 7 were a bit confused at Naruto's somewhat subdued attitude. In the short time they had known him, he had never been this calm. He still let out a giggle from time to time, but other than that, nothing. While they had been talking, Naruto had put the meat on the sticks and started to cook them, the smell filling the camp. When they were done, Naruto handed them out and sat back down on the rock from earlier. When he had finished his own meat, he put the stick down and pulled out his violin again. He had just started playing when Sasuke spoke. Can you teach me your style? Naruto didn't stop playing, leveling his gaze on the young Uchiha. Kakashi was about to tell Sasuke that he was being rude when he was stopped by the blonde. Sure, why not? We'll need to get you some weapons to use until I can make you something, but I don't have a problem with it. Actually, I think I have something here you can use. Putting down his violin and reaching into his bag, Naruto pulled out a scroll. Unrolling and putting his hand on one of the seals, a moment later there was a puff of smoke, and in his hands were two beautifully crafted katana. The blades were only 2 foot long, with seals carved onto their length from tip to handle. They had no guard and the handles were wrapped in a fine red silk. The sheaths were made out of wood that had been stained black. After giving them a quick inspection, Naruto threw them over to Sasuke. Catching the blades, Sasuke's eyes widened at the skill shown in the making of them. He turned back to Naruto when the boy started speaking again. They were one of the first things I made. The seals make the metal strong, and the blade shape should work for you just fine. Sasuke just stared at the weapons in his lap. Looking up at Naruto, he nodded and said just 2 words. Thank you? Naruto just nodded at him, then, picking up his violin, started to play again. Just like the night before, they all fell asleep to the sound of Naruto playing his violin. The next morning, after they had finished the rabbits Naruto had killed, the 2 Jonin sat the group down and explained about Zabuza. Needless to say, Naruto was the only one grinning at the end. So you're saying he's a demon? Asked a slightly shaking Sakura. Turning to his student, Kakashi replied. Pretty much. An air of depression started to leak out of the Genin. But this didn't last long. Potato! This caused them all to sweat drop. Turning to Naruto, Kurenai asked. Should I even bother to ask? Probably not. Shaking their heads, they returned to the conversation. Anyway, as we were saying, when Zabuza shows himself, you all stay with Tazuna while Kurenai and I fight him. You will not engage Zabuza. If something happens to us, you run, understand? The last part was directed at Naruto. That's stupid. Raising his one visible eyebrow, Kakashi motioned for Naruto to continue. If this guy is as strong as you say, then how can we outrun him if he kills both of you? That stopped both of the older ninja in their tracks. He was right. After that, they started to plan what to do if both the Jonin failed and continued on their way to Wave. They had crossed the river about an hour ago, and so far everything was going fine. At least no one had tried to kill them on the way across. Naruto had taken to walking on his hands instead of his feet shortly after they got off the boat. Ever since the Demon Brothers, they had started to be a lot more formal in the way they guarded Tazuna. Currently they were set up in a circle formation around him, Kurenai and Kakashi at the back, Naruto at the front, and the others at the sides. Naruto, I think you should walk on your feet again. We could be attacked at any minute. Pouting, Naruto did as he was told and started to walk normally. It was a few hours later when they found themselves in a thick mist that made it hard to see more than 10 feet in any direction. They knew instantly that it was Zabuza, and Nada could see the tiny particles of chakra mixed in with the mist. All that they were waiting for now was for him to make his move. The mist caused a big problem though. Not only did it make it hard to see, but according to Kurenai it made it almost impossible to cast her genjutsu, something about the chakra in the air messing with it. This meant that when he did make his move, Kakashi was on his own. They continued on their way, pretending that they weren't waiting for an attack. Then Kakashi heard it. The sound of something moving through the air at high speeds. Grabbing Tazuna, he yelled, "Get down!" Instantly they all hit the floor, heads down. Except Naruto, who had jumped up instead. As he was coming back down, instead of landing on the ground, he found himself spinning through the air on a giant sword. Whee! Eventually he stopped when it struck a tree and got stuck. That was fun! Getting off the sword, he wobbled for a moment, but before he could regain his balance, he was kicked hard in the back towards his team. Hey! That wasn't nice. Tell someone who gives a damn. Zabuza was tall as Naruto, but unlike Naruto, he was covered in muscles. He didn't wear a shirt, just gray and black cameo pants, gray arm warmers, and his slashed headband slightly tilted to one side. His voice was low and slightly muffled by the bandages that covered his face. But Naruto only saw one thing. Dude, what happened to your eyebrows? Even with the current situation, all those in the area face planted in the ground. When Zabuza picked himself up, he had a tick mark on his forehead. What the hell did you just say, Umami? You're one to talk. The two stared at each other for a moment, and then both burst out laughing. None of the others knew what to make of it. One minuet they were at each other's throats, and then they were laughing together. When they had both calmed down, Zabuza wiped a tear from his eye and said, "You're all right, kid, for a genin. But I've got a mission. Hand over the old man, and you can all walk away." No can do no brow. Silently nodding his head at the boy, Zabuza turned to Kakashi. So are we going to do this? Or do you want to trade insults for a bit? Taking out a kunai and lifting his headband, Kakashi just stared at the missing nin. Without saying anything else, the two met in a clash of steel, Kakashi with his kunai and Zabuza with his zanbato. It was a few minuets later that Zabuza gained the advantage, sending Kakashi into a nearby lake that none of them had seen through the mist, and trapping him in a sphere of water. He then made 20 water clones and had them charge the group. Running forward so that the real Zabuza would be in range, Kurenai sent her sharpshooter toward him at high speed. Unfortunately, without using genjutsu, it was easy for the missing nin to grab the blade and pull her to the water. Before she knew it, Kurenai was in the same predicament as Kakashi, only this time it was a clone that had her trapped. At a silent command from their creator, the clones went speeding towards the genin and bridge builder. This time, unlike with the demon brothers, none of them froze. Naruto and Sasuke ran to meet the clones before they could get to the others, while the genin stayed to protect Tazuna. Pulling his sides from his back, Naruto met the clones and started to spin. Sasuke, not having the chance to use the swords fixed to his back, chose to use a kunai in each hand. As he watched the two boys finish off his clones, Zabuza sent a curious look at the blonde. He could tell there was something different about him. If he was honest with himself, he reminded him of himself. It was this thought that made him laugh. "I've got to say, I didn't think you wimps in Konoha had it in you." He could just hear Kakashi's reply. "What are you talking about?" "Don't bullshit me, Kakashi. I know what it looks like when someone has had their mind broken. That kid has the same look in his eyes that I did at his age. The skills, the attitude, even the smile. You people have the makings of a true monster in that boy." He got no answer to this, which made him laugh again. But what he didn't realize was that he was so caught up in his conversation with Kakashi that he didn't see Naruto spin his way over to him and his captive. Just before one of the sides slit his stomach open, Zabuza jumped back away from the young psychopath. As soon as the jutsu was released, Kakashi sent a kunai at the clone that held Kurenai, destroying it, before he turned to resume his fight with the real Zabuza. Before the two could start again, Kurenai grabbed Naruto by the hood on the back of his straitjacket and jumped back to the group. The fight didn't last long after that. Both ninjas sent a water dragon at each other and Zabuza was sent flying into a tree. Slowly making his way to the down Zabuza, kunai in hand, Kakashi prepared to make the finishing blow. He never got the chance. Before he could finish what he started, 3 Saban were seen sticking out of the missing nin's neck. His eyes widened before going blank. Putting the kunai away, Kakashi stepped to the body and checked for a pulse. When he found none, he turned his head to a random tree and said, "Thank you for the assistance, Hunter-san." Before anyone could ask who he was talking to, a masked ninja jumped out of the tree and moving towards the body. They had on a SAE blue battle kimono, with their long brown hair tied up in a bun. The mask was mostly blank, except for the eye holes and the Kiri sign on the forehead. Nobody noticed the grin on Naruto's face stretch wider as the hunter passed him. Nodding at Kakashi, the hunter bent down to pick up the body and, without saying a word, shined away. Pulling down his forehead protector to cover his eye, Kakashi turned to the group. "Well done, you guys, great teamwork, and thanks Naruto, you saved my life. Now, if one of you could carry me the rest of the way to Tazuna's house, I'm going to sleep for a bit." And with that, Kakashi fell to the ground, unconscious. Running over and checking her fellow Jonin, Kurenai let out her breath and said to the others, "It's all right, he's just suffering from chakra exhaustion. A few days and he will be fine." Before anyone could say anything, Naruto walked up and grabbed Kakashi by his feet. Before they could ask what he was doing, Naruto started to drag him the way they had been going before Zabuza attacked. When he was a few meters away, he turned back to the group. They were all just stood there, staring at him. "What?" About an hour later, they arrived at Tazuna's house. Kakashi was being carried by Sasuke and Kiba, who had taken him after Naruto had wanted to drag him all the way there. They were all sat around Kakashi, who had been put in a spare room in Tazuna's house. He had regained consciousness a few minutes earlier. He had just finished telling them about how his eye used a lot of chakra, which was why he had chakra exhaustion. "At least now that Zabuza is out of the picture, I doubt we will have any more ninja to worry about. Naruto, is there a reason you're laughing like that, or is it just you again?" Partway through his talk, Naruto had started to roll around on the floor, banging his hand on the floor and holding his side. Ha ha, you actually believe ha. That Zabuza is dead, he. This confused the others in the room. When Naruto had calmed down, Kakashi asked him what he meant. All he said was, "That wasn't a hunter nin." Both Kakashi and Kurenai's faces took on a contemplating look. Then, something clicked into place. Kurenai slapped a hand to her face and Kakashi just said, "Shit." Turning to the still confused Genin, Kurenai explained. "Hunter nins are required to remove the head and destroy the body of any missing nins they kill, no exceptions outside of a battlefield." Nodding his head, Kakashi continued. "But the one that took Zabuza's body didn't. They took him away. We can only assume that they were working together, and the fake hunter put him into a near-death state. This means they will be back." The Genin got scared looks on their faces at his words. "Naruto, if you knew about the hunter, why didn't you say anything? You were dead on your feet. Kurenai still couldn't use her genjutsu, and the rest of us are Genin. Why do you think I didn't say anything?" Nodding his head at the logic, Kakashi moved on. "Fair enough. Now we need to discuss what we are going to do. From the injuries he gained from our fight and the stress from being put into a near-death state, Zabuza should be out of commission for about a month. Tazuna, how long will it take for you to finish your bridge?" Thinking on it for a moment, the old man said, "A little over a month." Nodding his head, Kakashi went on. "Right, which means we are almost guaranteed to run into him again. We have a month. It's not much, but it's something." Nodding her head, Kurenai spoke. "From now until then, we will be taking shifts. 2 of you will be training with me and Kakashi, 2 will be guarding Tazuna, and the other 2 will be guarding Tazuna's family. We can switch every 2 days. They all nodded their heads at this. "Potato!" Again they all stared at Naruto, who just shrugged. Shaking his head at the strange blonde, Tazuna said, "I just want to thank you for all you're doing for us. If it wasn't for you, I would never have made it this far." "Don't worry about it, you old drunk. If we didn't help you, then we wouldn't be any better than Gato." Everyone in the room nodded at this, agreeing with the crazy Genin. They were all sat around a table in Tazuna's house with his daughter Tsunami and her son Inari. Tsunami was a beautiful young woman in her late 20s with shoulder-length black hair and a gentle smile. Inari, on the other hand, had an air of defeat surrounding him. He had a plain white shirt underneath a set of green overalls. His brown hair was covered by a white hat, and his skin was very pale. Obviously, he didn't spend much time outside. No one said anything as they ate the small meal. They felt a little bad that they were eating so much of the family's food when they had so little. As soon as he finished, Inari ran upstairs to his room without saying a word to his mother. Turning to the ninja, Tsunami apologized to them all. Sorry about him, he was never able to get over Kaiser's death. Seeing the questioning looks on their faces, Tazuna explained about how Kaiser had opposed Gato and had been publicly executed. It was a sad story, and it got to all of them, even if they didn't all show it. After a few minutes of silence, Naruto stood and went to the front door. Seeing he was going, Kurenai asked, "Naruto, where are you going?" He didn't turn to face them, just looked over his shoulder with his usual grin on his face. The roof. Without saying anything else, he left. Those left in the room said nothing. Then they heard it, Naruto's violin. Like all the other times they heard him play, it was a soft, sad melody. Tsunami was shocked, this being the first time she had heard the young boy play. It was a beautiful sound, but it didn't seem right to her for someone that hadn't stopped smiling since he had got there to play it. Why does he play such sad music? He seems like such a happy boy. All the other people in the room stared at her for a moment before Kiba said, "Happy? He's fucking insane." They all nodded their heads at this, which caused Tsunami to frown. That's not a nice thing to say about someone. Shino took it upon himself to explain what they meant. "I'm sorry, Miss Tsunami, but I think you misunderstood. We weren't insulting him. He is actually insane. He spent the last 5 years in a mental institution. He was released a few months ago to become a ninja." Both Tsunami and Tazuna were shocked to hear this. But it was Tazuna that asked the next question. If he is insane, then why the hell is he a ninja? Both Jonin shared a look before Kurenai said, "There are certain things that we are not at liberty to saying. I'm afraid this is one of them." With that said, they all just sat there for a while listening to Naruto playing. And he was still playing when they all went to bed. The next morning when they woke, they were all surprised at what they found Naruto doing in the kitchen with Tsunami. Like when they had been traveling, Naruto had been hunting while they slept, but whereas before he had caught a few rabbits and a deer, last night he had caught what seemed like the entire forest that surrounded the area. The room was full of dead rabbits, about 20 different birds and 5 deer. The two were in the middle of skinning and plucking the carcasses and cutting up the meat. None of them knew what to make of it. They all just assumed that when they got here he would stop hunting. When he saw them all just stood there staring, his grin grew. "What?" Stepping forward, Kurenai explained their confusion. "Naruto, why did you go hunting? I could understand when we were traveling, but why now?" He just started laughing. "Ha ha ha! Gato has a stronghold on the whole island. Tsunami here hasn't been able to shop for decent food for a while, and now that we are all here she didn't have enough food. So I went hunting." Again, none of them knew what to say to this. It had never occurred to them that Tsunami couldn't shop for food. Tazuna was nearly in tears at what the blonde had done. For the next hour they all sat and helped, except Kakashi and Inari. While they were doing this, Kurenai thought about the plan. She realized it was not a good idea to leave any of the genin unsupervised. So as they were working, she told them all her changes. They would still be in teams of 2, but she would go to the bridge with Tazuna's guard, while Kakashi would supervise the training. The other thing was that Kakashi would need to stay within hearing distance of the house in case anything happened. They all agreed, and the Jonin told them the teams for the foreseeable future, and what they would do first. Kiba with Shino would be the first to guard the bridge with Kurenai, Sakura and Hinata would be the first to train with Kakashi, and Sasuke along with Naruto would look after Tsunami and Inari. About an hour before they set off for their respective assignments, Tsunami asked if it was okay for her to go into the village to try and find any vegetables that she might be able to buy. After considering it for a moment, Kurenai agreed that Naruto could go while Sasuke stayed to watch the house and Inari. This did not sit well with the Uchiha, but he just nodded his head and agreed. An hour later, Tazuna and his guard for the next 2 days set off for the bridge while Kakashi took Sakura and Hinata just inside the woods for their training. The 3 stayed in the kitchen to finish as Inari sulked in a corner of the room. When they were done with the animals, Naruto took all the organs that they couldn't use outside and dumped them in a circle around the house. Watching him, Tsunami asked what he was doing. Feeding my friends. I met a small pack of wolves when I was hunting and made a deal. I spread out some food for them and they will help guard the house. Nice bunch. After they tried to kill me, they were very sorry. Hee hee. You can talk to wolves. Wait, did you say they tried to kill you? I can communicate with most animals. With my bloodline to change my body, all I have to do is alter my vocal cords and a few parts of my brain. Simple. What's a bloodline? Something that only I can do. And the trying to kill you part? Naruto just shrugged and started doing backflips until he hit a tree. Ow. Giggling as he stood up, Naruto went back into the house. See what we meant last night when we said he was insane? Looking behind her, Tsunami saw Sasuke a few paces away. Not saying anything, she turned to head back to the house with a worried look on her face. Naruto and Tsunami were walking down the road towards the village. They hadn't really talked much since the whole wolf conversation. She just didn't know what to say to the young boy. Over the last few years she had seen a lot of things, like men and women killing themselves and their families just so they wouldn't suffer. Or on the rare occasions that Gato and his men returned one of the women they took, and they came back as empty shells. But Naruto was different. He had this aura around him. At first she had mistaken it for happiness, but after she talked to the other ninjas she realized that it was his insanity. Whatever made him like this, it was so bad that you could practically see it. It made her sad to look at him. He seemed like such a nice boy, a little okay, a lot strange, but still nice. He was walking a little way in front of her, hands folded behind his head. A few minutes later they were entering the town. A lot of people had lost their homes over the last few years because of Gato. Many of the houses were falling apart, or in some cases already fell down. The streets were full of people, both young and old, and if you looked carefully you could see some of them were dead. Tsunami tried not to look around at the people lying in the street. Naruto, on the other hand, looked at everything with a smile on his face. After wandering around for a while, they finally found a stand that had some only slightly out-of-date products. It was then that Naruto said something that shocked her. This reminds me of when I was little, rotten food at high prices, the smell of hopelessness in the air, or that might actually be that guy over there. I think he's starting to go out of date too. Tsunami didn't know what to say to this. Konoha was supposed to be the nicest place to live in all of the elemental nations. How could this remind him of his childhood? Before she could ask him what he meant, Naruto had walked away. It was on their way out of the village that Naruto noticed a building that stood out from the rest. Unlike those around it, this building was not in disrepair. It wasn't very good to look at, but it was in one piece, had a fairly new paint job and a front door, which was more than could be said for most. Hey, Tsunami-san, what's in there? Following his line of sight, her face took on a mixture of hatred and fear. That's one of Gato's buildings. He made it for his thugs. It's where they take the women they find in the village that they take a shine to, and... She didn't finish, she didn't need to. Then she saw a strange look on Naruto's face. It was like he was struggling to keep his grin. Without saying anything, he started towards the building, leaving her where she stood as the people around then all watching on silently as he crossed the street towards the building. When he came to the door, Naruto picked up his left foot and slammed it into the closed door, which flew off its hinges, and walked inside. The inside was nothing but a big room with sofas and beds. To one side of the room there were several women chained naked to a wall of all ages. The oldest looked to be in her late 30s, and the youngest being around his own age. Even though it was the middle of the day, the room was full of Gato's thugs, about 50, all with a woman. The air reeked of sex and fear. It was almost enough to make the young boy gag. After the thugs got over their shock, they started to get up and surround Naruto. When they had him covered on all sides, a very large, very fat man stepped forward. "You's got a death wish or samen?" His words were slightly blurred. He was obviously drunk. It was then that the thugs saw something that hadn't been seen in 5 years. Naruto stopped grinning. The air in the room seemed to get colder, and all the thugs took a step back. He didn't say anything, just stood there, looking around the room with cold, calculating eyes. When nothing happened, the thugs started to get their confidence back. The fat man from before walked up to Naruto, but because of the young boy's height, he was only a few inches taller than the boy. "Maybe yous didn't hears me. I said yous got a death wissa." He never finished. As soon as the man had gotten close, Naruto had thrust his hand forward and through the man's stomach. He was still alive, but in a lot of pain. All the thugs in the room were shocked. Leaning forwards, Naruto put his mouth next to the man's ear and said loud enough for all of them to hear. You have no idea. Without saying another word, Naruto gave a sharp pull and ripped out a long white object from the man's body. The man gave one last shuddering breath, and then fell over. In Naruto's hand for all to see was what was left of the man's spine, and yet Naruto didn't show any reaction. His face stayed impassive the whole time, until he dropped it. It was like someone had thrown a switch in his head. Slowly a smile grew in his face, and then it turned into a grin. They could hear the giggles in his throat as they became full-blown laughter. Then he started to change. Outside, a small crowd had gathered, but they couldn't see inside because none of them dared to get closer. Tsunami! Turning around to see who called her, Tsunami saw her father running to her side, Kurenai, Kiba and Shino right behind. Dad! What the hell's going on? One of the villagers came to the bridge screaming about something happening. It's Naruto. I don't know what happened. 1 minute he was here and then he was kicking the door down. At the mention of Naruto, Kurenai pushed Tazuna out of the way and grabbed Tsunami by the shoulders, her eyes wide. What is in that building? With a shaking voice, Tsunami told her what she told Naruto. Kurenai's eyes widened even more in understanding. Then they heard the laughter, followed by the screams of terror. Shit! It was like every other time he changed, the pain, the feeling of every cell in his body screaming in agony. Oh, how he loved it. As the men watched, Naruto started to get thinner and taller, but his body stayed the same size. His arms and legs seemed to be stretching. His clothes melded into his skin and turned into a patchy brown, cloth-like material. His eyes changed into big, round, black buttons that looked like they had been sewn onto his face. Lastly, his mouth sewed itself together into a malicious grin that stretched across his whole face. When he was done changing, he towered over all the thugs at about 11 foot. His arms as long as he was tall and trailed along the floor. The only way any of them could describe him was a giant ragdoll. They could still hear him giggling, although it was muffled by his lips being sewn together. No one in the room moved until the doll reached behind its back and showed them all the black, serrated sides it now held. When it moved, it was like watching a puppet show. Its limbs were boneless, turning its head a full 360 foot to look at each of them. The dam broke and all the thugs threw themselves at their weapons. What happened next was a mass of flying limbs and blood. The ragdoll seemed to be just that, a ragdoll. It could bend in any way it wanted, twisting and bending around the thugs as they tried desperately to kill it. It never stopped giggling the whole time they fought, and with each swing of its arms another thug would fall with limbs missing, but none of them were dead. Before long there was only one thug left standing. He was nothing special, brown hair and eyes that were filled with fear. The doll was covered in blood from all the other thugs that lay around them. He was frozen to the spot as the doll made its way over to him on wobbly legs. But it didn't even turn to him. It walked over to the girls chained to the wall. They shrank away from it in fear as it reached out, only to cut their chains with its scythes. One by one the doll cut the girls free and watched as they ran out the door with all the others. The thug saw his chance when it had its back to him, and ran forward and stabbed it in the lower back with his knife. The ragdoll made no sign that it could feel the knife. Slowly it started to lean back. It leaned so far that its head was in front of the thug upside down. Falling back on his ass, the thug tried to crawl away but stopped when the doll's mouth started to force its way open. Tell Gato I'm coming for him. Its voice was rough, like dry leaves rustling together. The thug just nodded quickly and ran out the door in a panic. Standing back up straight, the doll looked around at the men lying on the floor groaning in pain. Seeing them suffer brought another giggle to the doll's throat. Naruto? Turning its head again, the doll saw a crowd gathering outside the building. Stood at the front was Kurenai, Shino and Kiba, along with Tazuna and Tsunami. Turning the rest of its body to face the group, the doll slowly made its way over and stopped a few feet away, its head tilted to one side as it stared at Kurenai with its button eyes. Can you still understand me? Nodding its head slowly at her, Kurenai let out a sigh of relief. Good, now I need you to cancel your shift, okay? She spoke slowly, making sure each word was clear. It nodded its head, but before it changed back to Naruto it turned to the thugs in the room, forcing its mouth open again, but this time, instead of speaking it blew out a thick, black ash with embers floating in it. Kurenai could feel the heat coming from the ash from where she stood in the doorway as it filled the room. They could all hear the screams of the thugs as they were burned alive by the heat, then nothing. Turning back to the crowd, the doll made its way towards them and out the door. The crowd all backed up when they saw it walking towards them. When it was out of the building, they could all clearly see the thick layer of blood that coated its body. Slowly it started to turn back into Naruto. All the people stared at the boy in shock. Like the doll, he was covered in blood from head to toe, and had almost the exact same grin on his face. I regret nothing. With those 3 words, he fell face first into the road. When Naruto woke up, he found that he was in a small room, the same one that they kept Kakashi in when he had fainted. Getting up, he found that he was in a clean white shirt and black pants. He still had his bandages on, thankfully, but he still wondered where his clothes were. Heading downstairs, he found all the Konoha ninja along with Tazuna and Tsunami, who was holding his freshly cleaned clothes. Taking the clothes from the woman with a nod, he went back up to change. When he came down a few minutes later, they all just stared at him. Looking at each in turn, he said, "One fine day in the middle of the night, 2 dead men got up to fight. Back to back they faced each other, raised their swords and shot each other. They all face planted." After getting back up, Kakashi spoke. "Naruto, what you did was reckless. You could have been killed." Naruto just laughed at this. "I wish." The room went deadly quiet at his words, until Tsunami asked, "What do you mean you wish? Don't you even care if you live or die?" "Nope." Tears filled her eyes when he said this. "So how long was I out?" Kurenai was the one to answer this time. 2 hours. "Why did you do it?" They all turned to Tsunami again. They all knew what she meant by it. Turning to face her, Naruto got one of his rare real smiles. "Some people need to die. What they were doing was wrong. I hate people like them." Turning to face the genin, Naruto continued, "It's like I said, the things I hate are never around for long." After saying this, his grin came back. Nodding to himself, Naruto headed for the door. "Where are you going?" "Roof." Without another word, he left the room. And just like the night before, a few minutes later, they heard him playing his violin. Getting up, Tsunami wiped her eyes and turned to Kakashi and Kurenai. "I don't know what happened to make him like this, but I think I have an idea. Did you know that people say that Konoha is the best place to live in the elemental nations? If that was true, then why, when we were walking around town, did he say that it reminded him of when he was young?" Everyone in the room was shocked at this, except Kakashi and Kurenai. Both Jonin looked away, unable to meet her eye. "That's what I thought. I saw your face today, Kurenai-san. When I said Naruto had gone into that place, I saw the fear in your eyes. I don't know how things work in a ninja village, but whatever you did to him, well, I hope you are all ashamed of whatever it was, because that boy has done more for this village than anyone since my husband died." It was then that Kakashi looked up at Tsunami. His eye was so full of regret that it made her gasp. "You have no idea." Hardly anyone spoke to each other the next morning. None of them really knew what to say. Naruto and Tsunami were talking in the kitchen about different ways to cook the meat he had caught. The older woman was going out of her way to learn as much about the boy as possible. She didn't ask about his past, not wanting to bring it up in case it scared him off. "So Naruto, how do you know so much about hunting?" "It's what I do at Konoha for food." Tsunami stopped washing the dishes to look at Naruto when he said this. "What do you mean?" All the others in the room looked at him from the corner of their eyes, waiting for an explanation. "I live in a forest. Nice place, no one goes there because of the fence." Shortly after that, Kurenai and Kakashi took their temporary teams and they were left alone in the house. After what had happened the day before, Kurenai decided that it would be best for them not to leave, which everyone but Naruto agreed with. At some point, through unspoken agreement, Naruto was put with Tsunami while Sasuke would guard Inari. Sasuke didn't have a problem with this because Inari never left his room. For the entire morning, Tsunami would ask Naruto questions. Sometimes she would get answers, other time nothing. One thing she did notice was that when he explained something, he got very serious. There was the occasional mad moment, like when he started juggling knives, badly, but she soon got used to it. If there was one thing Tsunami learned, it was that Naruto was smarter than he looked, the way he explained things in such detail. It was amazing. But there was no denying he was insane. Sometimes she would hear him talk to himself under his breath, or he would just start laughing at nothing. At one point she could have sworn that she saw him cut himself on the arm with a knife out of the corner of her eye. But when she turned to look at him fully, there was no sign of there ever being one. It was the afternoon when Tsunami finally asked him about the day before. She wasn't planning on bringing it up, but something had been bothering her. "Naruto, can I ask you something about yesterday?" Seeing him nod, she continued. "What was that thing you became? I've never heard of a ninja doing something like that. It looked like something out of a nightmare." Turning to face her completely, he grinned. That's exactly what it was. Seeing that she didn't understand, Naruto just laughed and went on. "Remember when I said I had a bloodline, something that only I can do? Well, that was it. I can become anything. The only limitations are my chakra and my imagination, that and a high healing factor. The thing you saw yesterday, that ragdoll, was from one of my nightmares." Tsunami was shocked. To be able to do something like that was incredible. "Why use a nightmare? Why not an animal or something like that?" "I use my nightmares as inspiration. I let my enemies feel true fear before I kill them." Tsunami really didn't know what to say to that. "Can I see?" Nodding his head, Naruto lifted up his hand. Slowly, the bandages melted into his flesh and were replaced by thick, wiry black fur. His fingers stretched, and his hand grew to about the size of his head. Thick claws grew at the ends of his fingers, curved at the tips into hooks. When it stopped, Naruto's hand was completely changed into an animalistic claw. Tsunami just stared at it for a long moment. She didn't actually see him change the day before and was fascinated. Reaching out her hand, she stopped just centimeters from touching it. "May I?" Again he just nodded his head, never taking his eyes off her face. Closing the distance between their hands, she was slightly surprised by how soft it was. It felt just like a dog's coat. The claws were razor sharp, perfect for tearing flesh from bone. The whole time she was looking at her hand, Naruto was watching how she would react. "Does it hurt?" He grinned insanely at her question. "It is the second most painful thing I have ever felt." With that, he pulled his hand back and started to walk away to do a perimeter check, his hand changing back to normal as he went. Before he left, Tsunami asked one more question. "What was the first?" He just laughed and went outside. They were all at the table for dinner. Naruto made it and had used the meat from several different animals to make something he called game stew. When hearing it was Naruto's recipe, the others were a little scared. At first, Tazuna refused to eat it until Tsunami threatened to force it down his throat. He could still remember the burning in his throat from the hangover cure. No one but Naruto and Tsunami were eating. They all just stared at the bowl of lumpy liquid in front of them. Seeing that they weren't eating, Naruto put his spoon down and looked at all of them. "Eat or I'll dye all your hair different colors while you sleep." They grabbed their spoons and swallowed a mouthful before they could think it through. All their eyes widened at the taste. It was good. The meat was tender and melted in the mouth, the seasoning was perfect, and the broth was delicious. Seeing their reactions, Naruto laughed and started eating again. None of them spoke as they ate. Even Inari seemed to be enjoying the meal. When they were all finished, they all stared at Naruto before Kurenai asked where he learned to cook like that. "Trial and error. First time I tried cooking, I couldn't shit for a week." Nodding their heads weakly, they all went to the sitting room while Tsunami washed the dishes, except Inari, who went to his room. A few minutes later, Naruto pulled out a small orange book from his back pocket and started flipping through the pages at a fast pace. When he didn't stop, Sakura asked what he was doing. Without taking his eyes away from the book, he said in a flat tone, "Reading." The Pinkett was confused when he said this. "But you're just flipping through the pages." He didn't respond to this and kept flipping. It was then that Kakashi noticed the title of the book, and his eyes widened. "Naruto, where did you get that book?" "Your bag." Oh, this was so not good. Turning to Kurenai, Kakashi shrank back in fear. She was staring at him with fury in her eyes and a dark aura surrounding her. But before she could kill him for corrupting her student, Naruto got up from his chair and went over to Kakashi, book in hand. For a moment Kakashi thought he would be like any healthy man and get down on his knees and cry tears of joy. What he didn't expect was for Naruto to slam it down on his head so hard he saw stars. If I catch you reading this again, I'll strip you naked, hog tie you, write pervert on your chest, and throw you into a kunoichi-only bathhouse. Understand? To emphasize his point, Naruto kicked the one-eyed Jonin between the legs, causing all the other males in the room to wince. Kakashi's eyes went wide and he let out a high-pitched scream as he curled into a ball. Nodding his head in satisfaction, Naruto went to the door and left. When he was gone, Sasuke walked over to his sensei to make sure he was okay. Turning to Kurenai, Shino asked, "What exactly is in that book?" Shaking her head and looking down at Kakashi, Kurenai wondered if it would be overkill to kick him herself. "Something that if any woman sees you reading, they will kick your ass. Though I am glad Naruto seems immune to the rotten thing." Nodding their heads, Kiba, Shino, and Sasuke backed away from Kurenai. The next day found Kakashi, Sasuke, and Naruto at the edge of the forest that surrounded Tazuna's house. Today there would be training. The girls would be with Tazuna and Kiba, and Shino would guard the house. Turning to face the two boys, Kakashi told them what they would be doing. "Okay, since Naruto agreed to teach Sasuke his fighting style, I thought we could work on that." Nodding his head, Naruto gave Kakashi a piece of paper. "What's this?" "A list of things I need to start teaching him." Shrugging his shoulders, Kakashi skimmed over the list. Naruto, why do you need a rope, a rotten fish, and a bucket?" Naruto just grinned and made his way towards a tree. 10 minutes later, Sasuke was starting to regret asking for the blonde's help. He was currently hanging upside down with his arms and legs tied so he couldn't untie himself, and a rotten fish tied to his head. He could feel the blood rushing to his head and was starting to fall ill from the smell of the fish. Walking up to the Uchiha, Naruto looked over all the knots and placed the bucket under his head. Kakashi was off to one side watching with a critical eye. "Okay, everything seems to be good, now we can start." Grabbing Sasuke's arm, Naruto started to walk around, slowly spinning him until the rope wouldn't turn anymore. Having enough of the blonde making a fool out of him, Sasuke yelled, "How the hell is this supposed to teach me to fight, you fucking asshole?" "Calm down, duckass, you want my help or not?" "I'm not sure anymore." When he said this, Naruto smacked him in the back of the head. "Shut up, now the reason we are doing this is because you need to get so dizzy you puke." This made Sasuke's eyes widen in sudden fear. He looked at the rope and then at the bucket underneath him. "What the hell? My style is all about spinning to build up momentum, and use that to increase your attack and defense. The drawback to this is that it makes you dizzy when you stop. So, I'm going to start with building up your tolerance to motion sickness." "Then why do I have a rotten fish on my head?" "I made a bet with Shino that I could get you to smell like a rotten fish, but that's not important now, and remember to aim for the bucket." Before Sasuke could yell at him again, Naruto let go of his arm and he started to spin. As soon as he let go, Naruto darted away and stood behind a tree. Kakashi, seeing what he was doing, asked why. Naruto just grinned at him and pointed to the screaming Sasuke. As he turned, Kakashi was hit in the face with Sasuke's puke. "Ah, that's why." When he turned back to the insane blonde, he was rolling on the ground laughing. "Ha ha ha, he got you, ha 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 ha." When Naruto had calmed down, and Kakashi had cleaned himself off with a low-level water jutsu, the two turned back to Sasuke. He was very pale and his eyes were unfocused, but as soon as he was back to normal, Naruto did it again before he could speak. This continued for the next 3 hours straight until Sasuke stopped puking and was able to yell at Naruto while he was still spinning. The bucket was full and the surrounding area now had several puddles of sick. Kakashi had learned his lesson the first time and was able to avoid being splattered again. Finally satisfied that Sasuke was used to spinning at high speeds, Naruto went and cut him down with a kunai he had gotten from Kakashi. What he forgot to do, however, was move the bucket. As soon as he cut the rope, Sasuke fell face first into the bucket, which caused Naruto to fall on the ground and laugh yet again. When Sasuke got up and couldn't get the bucket off his head, Naruto started having trouble breathing. After a few minutes, Kakashi took pity on his student and pulled the bucket off. The young Uchiha just stared daggers at the blonde rolling around on the ground at his expense. It took a full 10 minutes for Naruto to calm down, and he still couldn't help the odd giggle here and there. "Right, now that you got used to spinning, I think I should explain more about my style." Like I said earlier, it requires you to spin to build up momentum but makes you dizzy when you stop, which is why I spun you around for the last 3 hours. It is because of this I named it the drunken spinner style. Okay, now there are 2 ways to counteract this style. One is to spin faster than your opponent to build up more momentum, and the other is to spin at the same speed but in the opposite direction from your opponent, with me so far. When they both nodded, he went on. They had all sat down during the explanation, Kakashi because he knew it would be long and Sasuke because he was still a little shaky on his feet. Now the longer you are able to spin, the longer you can fight using this style, but if you use it continually for too long, it will take a while for you to get over the dizziness. There are 3 forms to my style. The first is all about attack, the second is all about defense, and the third is about subduing the enemy. Again they nodded. Now the way I used it on the Demon Brothers was the third form. It is a more advanced form that requires great kinjutsu skill to ensure you only break the first layer of skin. I will not be teaching you this form. At this, Sasuke shot to his feet in anger and yelled. What? Why not? It wouldn't suit your style. This calmed Sasuke down instantly. This Naruto he could stand to be around, calculating and serious. If he said this, he would have a valid reason. Nodding his head for the blonde to continue, Sasuke sat back down on the ground to listen. The way you fight is all about power. You use your strength and jutsu to overpower your opponents as quickly as possible. Is that a bad thing? No, actually it is perfect for a ninja. Kill quickly and efficiently, in and out. But I made the third variation as a way to prolong the fight, causing the most amount of pain but not killing them. In essence, it is a capture technique. Sasuke thought about what Naruto said for a moment before nodding his head. I see what you mean, but then what are you going to teach me, the first? Actually, I'm going to teach you a bit of the first and the second. You never know when you will need it, just in case. This time it was Kakashi to nod his head in agreement. He's right, knowing both will only help you in the long run. You can still focus on one, but even if you only know the basics of the other, it might mean the difference between life and death later on. By the way, I will only teach you the basics and mechanics of the style. This time Sasuke kept his calm. Why? Because if I show you the basics, you can build it up and make it your own. The drunken spinner is a loose style. It's all about quick, flowing movements, and if I show you all the ways I use it, it might not be as effective. This way it will be perfect for you. I said I'd teach you a style, well I changed my mind, and I'm going to help you make your own. Both Kakashi and Sasuke were a little shocked at his words. He was not only willing to let Sasuke use his style, but was going to take the time to rework it just so it would work better for him. Then he said something that made their thought process come to a complete stop, and their eyes to go wide. You know, now that I think about it, this could be the perfect style for you. I mean, when you activate your Sharingan you can process movement better, right? So in theory you could skip the side effects completely, or at least they would be less of a problem. Both their minds went back into overdrive. He was right. When Sasuke's Sharingan activated, this could be the perfect style. It was a powerful style, and the only thing that would be a problem was the after effects. But something was still bugging Sasuke. Why are you doing this? You created a powerful fighting style and now you're doing all this for me. We don't even know each other. Actually, I don't even like you. So why are you doing this? Naruto thought about that for a moment, and when he came up with a good reply he answered. Because you asked me to. That's it, because I asked you to? Pretty much, but you're right. We don't know each other that well and I can tell you don't like me. Not many people do for some reason, but I can tell you are full of pride, and so for you to ask me for help must have been hard for you. And as for why I'm putting in so much effort to help you, well, if you have a strong fighting style then it looks good on me for helping you create it. This made sense to the Uchiha. By teaching him this style, Naruto could say he helped make it. Plus this is a good lesson for you. When you have your Sharingan you will be tempted like so many Uchiha before you to rely on it too much. This way it shows you the benefits of hard work. Sasuke didn't know if he should be grateful for the help or angry that he insulted his family. Fortunately, he didn't have to decide. He's right, Sasuke. Turning to his sensei, Sasuke just stared at him, waiting for an explanation. Take it from someone who's fell into that trap already. I became complacent with my skills and relied on the Sharingan too much. It made me arrogant. Because of this I made a mistake that I can never take back. Sasuke didn't see Kakashi looking at Naruto out of the corner of his eye when he said this, but Naruto did. The three of them said nothing for a few minutes, lost in their own thoughts, Kakashi of the past, Sasuke on his family, and Naruto wondering if he could pat his head and rub his belly at the same time. When the moment passed, Naruto stood up and looked down at the two. Anyway, like I was saying, I will teach you the basics of the style and let you do the rest yourself. But I think you should do something else for the rest of the day. You still look ill. So I'll leave you with Kakashi and go do my own training. Later. He was gone before Kakashi could say anything. Letting out a deep breath, Kakashi turned back to Sasuke. He was still a bit pale, his hair had sick in it, and for some reason he was still wearing the rotten fish. Okay, for the rest of the day we will be doing the tree walking exercise. They didn't see Naruto until it was time to go back to the house. When the blonde came back into the clearing, it was to a tired Sasuke and Kakashi quickly hiding his book behind his back. When they got to the house, they were the last to arrive. As they came into the sitting room, all eyes turned to them, or more specifically, Sasuke. Without saying a word, Shino walked over to Naruto and gave him some money. Confused by the exchange, Sasuke suddenly remembered what Naruto had said earlier about a bet with Shino. Trying to be inconspicuous, Sasuke made his way over to a window and threw the rotten fish into the lake outside, then turned back and glared at Naruto. The next day training went more or less the same as the day before, but without the rotten fish, and instead of tying him up, Naruto just had Sasuke spin on his feet in one spot. When he had been doing that for a few hours, Naruto had Sasuke try and spin while moving towards a tree in an attempt to get him used to keeping his balance while he spun. This was a lot harder, as it was no easy task to see while spinning, and going in a straight line was difficult. After another couple of hours of this, Naruto decided that it was time to call it a day and set out to do his own training while Kakashi had Sasuke doing the tree climbing exercise again. At one point, Kakashi had tried to find the blonde to see if he could help him in whatever it was he was training in, but couldn't find him. Giving up, he had gone back to supervise Sasuke as he tried over and over again to make it up the tree without success. It wasn't until just before the sun went down that they saw Naruto again. He didn't even seem tired, but then again he never did. Heading back towards the house, Kakashi tried multiple times to get Naruto to tell him what he was doing and where he had been, but every time the boy would just smile at him without answering. After dinner, all the ninja met up in the sitting room to discuss what had happened in the day and what they would be doing tomorrow. The bridge was going well, but if Tazuna lost any more workers, they would start to fall behind. Kakashi gave a quick summary of how Sasuke's training was going, but explained how Naruto would go and do his own training and couldn't report on the blonde's progress. When Kurenai didn't say anything, Kakashi guessed that this happened regularly, and it wasn't just him. At some point while they were talking, Shino and Hinata took out their respective weapons and started to clean them for something to do. When Kakashi and his team took notice of this, they all moved forward to see. They had all heard about the new weapons of the Aburame and Hyuga clans, but not many people had actually seen them. They marveled at the elegant tools of death and how much care had gone into the making. Kiba, seeing his chance to ask about the weapons for his clan, stepped closer with a smug look on his face. His mother had been trying to find out who the craftsman was ever since they had been shown at a council meeting. All she was able to find out was that they were connected to a small ninja shop owned by a man named Higashi. But despite numerous attempts at getting the old fool to talk, he refused to say anything. His mother was desperate, as were the other clans of Konoha, to have their own weapons made by the mysterious weapons maker known only as the Faceless Blacksmith. So these are the new famed weapons of your clans. They don't look like much. Shino's looks like a pipe. What harm could they do? I bet the guy that made them was just a fraud. Both Shino and Hinata raised their eyebrows at the dog-like boy's words and resisted the urge to look at Naruto in the corner of the room. Standing up from his seat, Shino went over to the log pile next to the unlit fireplace, picked up 2 large pieces of oak and made his way into the center of the room. Putting the wood down for a moment, the bug user fixed his wasp point to his arm. Without saying a word, Shino threw one of the oak logs into the air and, with speed Kiba could barely follow, thrust his arm forward. The pipe-like weapon shot out of his sleeve and pierced the log. What shocked the young Inuzuka was that the log started to disintegrate before his eyes. When there was nothing left, they could all see the bugs flying back to Shino from the pile of dust on the floor. Turning to look at Hinata, she gave a small nod and stood, her hands of kami already on. Bending and picking up the other piece of wood, Shino threw it at the waiting girl. All Hinata did was raise her right hand, which had a light blue glow trailing along several of the seals carved into the metal, and tap the wood as it flew towards her, which caused it to explode in a shower of splinters. They turned their attention towards the shocked members of Team 7, and Hinata explained. Both our weapons are designed to increase our clan's fighting styles. Getting over his shock, Kiba got a contemplating look on his face. When he was done thinking, he looked at them both with determination in his eyes. Foregoing being polite, Kiba asked them straight. Who made them? This time it was Shino to answer. We are not at liberty to reveal the identity of the faceless blacksmith. It was a condition made when we received the weapons, only our clan heads know who he is. At his words, Kiba lost his temper. Slamming his hands on the side of his chair and shooting to his feet, he stormed over to the quiet boy and grabbed him by the collar. Listen here, you freak. It's not right that both your clans get special attention, and it's not fair that you don't tell the other clans who he is. You think that you can keep him all to yourselves? We all want a weapon made for us. Now start talking or I'll fucking beat it out of you. I would suggest you release me. As I said, I am not allowed to tell you anything, and it's okay, Shino, dog piss. If you don't release my friend in the next 3 seconds, I'm going to strangle you with your own intestines. Turning to face the blonde in his rage-filled mind, Kiba barely heard the threat. Shut your fucking mouth, Uzumaki. This has nothing to do with you. Naruto's grin just widened at the dog-like boy as Akamaru ran away from his partner and hid under a chair. Walking over to Kiba, the blonde, without saying a word, hit him in the face, sending him across the room, the shock snapping him out of his anger. That's where you're wrong, pup. I'm the faceless blacksmith, shit brain. At his words, all of Team 7 turned shocked expressions towards Shino and Hinata. When they reluctantly nodded their heads, Kiba went very pale and stared at the insane blonde that was grinning down at him, and said the only thing that he could think of. Fuck. Flashback. Naruto was in a good mood. He had just met his team, and he had a feeling that they would be fun to work with. They all seemed like good people, so he wouldn't need to kill them later on, which was a plus. Also, he had just successfully snuck into an ANBU base and dyed all their uniforms bright orange. The look on their faces was priceless, and he was glad he had a camera. He was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't realize he had wandered into a back alley of the market district of Konoha. When he did take notice of his surroundings, he found himself outside a small shop. It had an old wooden sign in the shape of a kunai hung over the door, the universal sign for a shinobi shop. The windows were so dirty that he couldn't see inside. He couldn't see a name anywhere, and there didn't seem to be any other shops in the area. His interest piqued. Naruto pushed the door open and went inside. The inside was the same as the outside of the shop, dark and dirty. There was just enough light to see without bumping into anything. The shelves were stocked with an assortment of different weapons from kunai to swords, but they all had a thick layer of dust coating them. In one corner of the store, Naruto could see clothes and armor on display. If he had to guess, Naruto would say that this shop hadn't had a customer in a long time. Smiling to himself at the thought, Naruto made his way to the back of the room in hopes of finding someone. And he did. There, at the back of the room, leaning on a counter, was a large middle-aged man. He was big, almost 7 foot tall, with huge muscles and large hands. He had on a thin gray sleeveless shirt under a thick leather apron and thick pants. The top of his head was shaved, and he had a thick black beard. When the man saw Naruto, he stood up and looked at the boy with hope in his eyes before saying in a deep voice, "Please tell me you want to buy something." Naruto wasn't surprised at the pleading tone. It seemed he was right about the shop not having much business. "You got a smithy, or do you order everything?" The large man was surprised at the boy's question. "It's in the back, why?" When said this, Naruto's grin stretched even bigger. "I've been looking for one to rent out to work on a few projects of mine." This got the man thinking. If H let the boy use his smithy, he could charge him and make a bit of money. Kami knows he needs it. "Name's Higashi, and if you can pay, I don't see a problem with letting you use my workshop." Taking the man's outstretched hand to shake, Naruto replied, "Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto had expected a lot of things when he told Higashi his name, insults, and shouting being at the top of the list. But what happened was enough to shock even him. Higashi's eyes widened and he let out a small gasp. Without letting go of the young boy's hand, the muscular man pulled him forward and hugged him. Naruto stiffened at first, thinking he was being attacked, until he felt water falling onto his face. Looking up at the mountain of a man, Naruto was shocked yet again when he saw the tears falling down his face.